Chapter 471. Daong Nation's Prime Minister's residence had been burned down, and Prime Minister Yin Wufeng's whereabouts were unknown. It was said that he had been captured. Last night's commotion was so huge that almost the entire city knew about it. When the news spread, the entire Daong city was in an uproar. Everyone's topic immediately shifted from the princess's betrothal contest to this matter. Although the streets leading to the Prime Minister's residence had been sealed off, the commoners who wanted to watch the commotion could still see from afar that the once luxurious Prime Minister's residence had been reduced to a foul atmosphere. By the time they saw it, there was still smoke that had yet to be completely extinguished rising up, confirming the rumor that a fire had descended from the heavens and burned down the Prime Minister's residence. Daong Nation was shocked, and so were the envoys from all the other nations. From time to time, messenger pigeons would soar into the sky above Daong City, relaying the news back to their respective nations. In Daong Nation's palace, the officials gathered to discuss the matter. The people who lived in the secluded courtyard in Baiwan Nation's embassy territory were all present. That hipster had some tricks up her sleeves. Hibiscus had already thoroughly fooled around with her. The two of them were lying on the lush green grass, whispering to each other. No one knew what they were plotting. Yu Qianqiu occupied the swing that originally belonged to the hipster. He closed his eyes and basked in the sun as he swayed gently on it. He held a jade archive in his hand and examined it. It was the jade archive that Lu Wanwan had given him. The vast amount of records in it showed that he had indeed put in a lot of effort into it. Perhaps he really did intend to bring it back to Wuxia. Yu Qianqiu had already handed over the kidnapped Yin Wufeng and the other cultivators to Guan Yu for interrogation. It would be best if he could force some useful information out of them. Before he left, Yu Qianqiu had specifically instructed him that it was fine even if he used torture to extort a confession. Beside him, Zhang Peng shook the swing from time to time, not letting it stop. At first, he thought that Miao Yi had fallen asleep on the swing, but when he saw Miao Yi opening his eyes slightly to look at Hibiscus, Zhang Peng finally asked, "Mr. Ahem. I heard from His Highness that the Prime Minister's residence was burned down by a huge fire last night. There was also a huge battle, and hundreds of ordinary soldiers died. It seems that the Prime Minister has also disappeared. Mister, next time you have something like this, please take me with you." He immediately guessed that it was his master who did it. The sun was a little dazzling. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and looked at him. He said lazily, "There are too many people here. With your size, even if you cover your face, people will be able to recognize you at a glance. Don't worry. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future." Zhang Peng was speechless. He didn't expect that his good physique, which allowed him to charge and break through enemy lines on the battlefield, would become a burden. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and immersed himself in the vast amount of records in the Jade Archive once again. Yin Baikong, who was at the final stage of the demigod stage, was actually the true ruler of the largest foreign nation, the Tu-An nation. His grandson, Yin Wufeng, actually ran over to the Daong nation to become the prime minister. This was rather interesting. Speaking of which, Yin Baikong was most likely the spirit-severing expert in the cultivation world who had the most children. He was desperately sowing seeds in hopes of producing 1 or 2 children with cultivating spiritual roots. However, up until now, even though he had many children and grandchildren, not a single one of them was able to cultivate. It was said that in recent years, he had resigned himself to his fate and stopped doing such things. After reading this news, Yu Qianqiu was a little depressed. He originally thought that by capturing his precious grandson, he could extort a huge sum of money. He didn't expect this old thing to have no less than 100 grandsons. He probably wouldn't care if 1 or 2 of them died. However, when he saw that among the old thing's grandsons, there were less than 10 who had any potential, Yu Qianqiu was delighted. No wonder Yin Wufeng was able to become the prime minister of the Daong nation. Yin Baikong probably sold a lot of face to get it. Otherwise, Hua Zongming, who actually controlled the Daong nation, wouldn't have agreed to it. This meant that the hostage in his hands was still worth some money. Sigh. It's been a long time since I've done something like kidnapping and extortion. I didn't think I'd have the chance to do it again in this lifetime. Oh, this Baikong is one of the richest people in the cultivation world. I wonder how much this grandson of his is worth. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and smiled as he muttered to himself. Mister, what did you say? Zhang Peng didn't hear him clearly and thought he was talking to him. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and smiled as he waved his hand. I'm not talking to you. He put away the jade archive in his hand and took out the jade archive with the detailed topographic map of the Dayong nation. He had to find an advantageous place to pay the ransom. He carefully examined the surrounding terrain of the Dayong city and finally determined the location to be a valley not far from the city. In the Dayong nation's palace, Emperor Xiaofan was having a headache from the quarrel of his ministers. The dignified prime minister of a nation had suddenly disappeared. This matter was getting out of hand. Moreover, it happened right when the princess was about to hold a martial arts competition to find a spouse. In the Golden Hall, although the ministers were righteously condemning the murderer and requesting for the prime minister to be found as soon as possible, everyone was muttering in their hearts. With the prime minister's residence in such a blood-soaked state, their beloved prime minister probably wouldn't be able to return. Hence, someone started saying that although the prime minister was no longer around, the affairs of the nation couldn't be left unattended for even a day. They had to find someone to temporarily replace the prime minister. Once the prime minister was found, he would be handed over to the prime minister. With that, the missing prime minister was immediately thrown aside. The ministers all wanted to recommend someone who represented their faction to temporarily replace the prime minister. This was because everyone knew that if the prime minister didn't return, the person who would replace him would probably become the real prime minister. Emperor Xiaoheng sat upright on the dragon throne with a sullen face as he looked at the ministers who were on the verge of making a move. They didn't know, but he did. Wufeng was a person with a powerful background. He didn't know how this matter would end. It wasn't the time to replace the prime minister. The few elders in the palace had already told him yesterday that this matter was no longer something the imperial court could interfere with. Once the cultivation world was done with it, he would make the final decision. Just when the ministers were in a heated argument, a report came from outside. A golden palace guard ran in and reported loudly while kneeling on one knee, "Your Majesty, the city patrol division has found the prime minister's concubine, Madame Li." The hall instantly fell silent. All the ministers looked at each other. Zhao Heng waved his hand and said, "Bring him to the harem. I want to question him personally." After saying that, he was too lazy to care about the group of people below him and left. A beautiful and graceful woman was brought to a remote area of the harem by a few guards. It was considered a forbidden area of the harem. It had its own gate and courtyard, and there weren't even any guards. When she reached the gate, the guards stopped and invited her to enter alone. Lady Li walked in slowly, trembling with fear. She saw the emperor, Zhao Heng, and 3 elders standing together. The 4 of them were staring at her with burning eyes, causing her to shudder. There was a fresh whip mark on Madame Li's face, and her clothes were torn. It was obvious that she had been whipped. Think about it. Other than the person who attacked the prime minister's residence, who else would dare to hit the prime minister's wife? Their gazes didn't linger on her. Instead, they were all staring at the jade archive in her hand. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Madame Li's voice trembled as she bowed. No need for formalities. Zhao Heng's expression was cold. He had met Madame Li before, but he hadn't been this respectful. It was obvious that he was scared out of his wits, and he still had a look of lingering fear. Just as Madame Li rose to her feet, Zhao Heng shouted, "Where is the Prime Minister?" Madame Li was so frightened that she trembled on the spot. She fell to her knees again and said fearfully, "I don't know. I don't know anything. Your Majesty, please spare me." Seeing her kneel again, Zhao Heng's expression softened a little. He asked in a deep voice, "Speak. What is going on? Tell me everything you know. If you dare to lie to me, I will immediately drag you out and execute you." I'll speak. Madame Li trembled as she said, "There was a huge fire. There was a huge fire all of a sudden. Not long after Milord and I escaped, a lot of masked men who could fly suddenly appeared. They started killing people, killing a lot of people. They knocked us unconscious. When we woke up, they asked me questions that I didn't know the answer to. I said I didn't know, so they kept hitting me." The others frowned as they listened. This woman was obviously scared out of her wits. She was speaking incoherently. Xiaofan asked, "What did they ask you?" "Yin Bai Kong. They asked me about Yin Bai Kong, but I really don't know this person." Madame Li started crying as she spoke. The three Mi brothers exchanged glances with each other. As expected, they were here for Yin Bai Kong. They didn't know who could be so daring. "Then how did you come back? Where is the Prime Minister? Did he come back?" Xiaofan continued to ask. "I don't know. I really don't know anything." Madame Li stuttered, "They knocked me unconscious again. When I woke up, I was outside the city. A masked man gave me this and told me not to lose it. If I lost it, he would take my life. He said this is something to save the Prime Minister." As she said this, she raised the jade archive in her hand. Mi Russian's fingers formed a palm as he took the jade archive into his hand. He immediately used his divine sense to examine it, only to see that it said, "Yin Bai Kong, I don't care if you're a demigod or dog transformation cultivator. Your precious grandson is in my hands. I've been a little short on money lately, so I've kidnapped your grandson. If you want your grandson back, prepare 200 million high-grade spirit stones as ransom. Within 3 days, if I don't see any spirit stones, I guarantee that your name, Yin Bai Kong, will be immortalized in the cultivation world. Below is the place to hand over the spirit stones. Don't get it wrong." Mi Russian's expression twitched. The inscription was Hero. Looking further down, there was a map. It was probably the place to hand over the spirit stones. "Take a look." Mi Russian didn't know what to say after reading it. He passed the jade archive to his two brothers. The two of them were speechless after reading it. The jade archive returned to Mi Russian's hand. "Let her go. We won't be able to get anything out of her." Mi Russian waved his hand. Xiaofan immediately had someone take Madame Li away. He then asked, "High Priest, what's inside?" He. Someone must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's gall. They kidnapped Yin Bai Kong's grandson and blackmailed him for spirit stones. Mi Russian laughed coldly. In his heart, he was wondering which lunatic did this. How could Yin Bai Kong's money be so easily extorted? Xiaofan also knew what kind of person Yin Bai Kong was. He was shocked and asked, Who? Who did this?" The word, hero, came out of Mi Ruhai's mouth. Mi Ruchuan laughed and said, He. Who is this person? I'd really like to get to know him. He clearly did something shameful, yet he still wants to call himself a hero. But, even though it wasn't done by a hero, his guts are definitely heroic. Chapter 472. Hero? Emperor Xiaofan stroked the sparse beard on his chin. Why does this sound like child's play? Is it possible that someone is joking with Yin Bai Kong? Mi Russian shook his head. You can't joke like that. 4 of Yin Bai Kong's disciples have already been killed. This enmity has been formed. Dog transformation stage, he. Interesting. If these words were to reach Yin Bai Kong's ears, I wonder what kind of reaction Yin Bai Kong would have. Mi Ruchuan said happily. No matter what his reaction is, it's not our fault that someone has come to bear the responsibility. Your Majesty, the Dian Kingdom cannot fall into chaos because of a grandson of Yin Bai Kong. You have to put in more effort. Otherwise, you will not be able to explain to master. After me Russian finished speaking to Xiaofan, he said to the two brothers, I'll leave this place to you. I will return to Illumination Peak and pay a visit to master. He will naturally take care of this. The three of them bowed together, and me Russian quickly flew into the sky. Illumination Peak was the highest mountain in the Dayan Kingdom. It was located in the depths of the wilderness. Mortals could only look at it from afar and could not approach it. In the Great Light Palace at the peak, there was a guest from the Tuan Kingdom. It was Yin Baikong's second disciple, Jing Yuankong, who had reached the early divine transformation stage. Hua Zongming was wearing thin clothes and was barefooted. He leaned against the golden couch in the center. He held a golden wine cup in one hand and gently swirled it around his nose. He seemed to enjoy the fragrance of the wine. His slightly narrowed eyes occasionally flashed with a fierce light as he glanced at Jing Yuankong. Jing Yuankong stared with a dark expression at the small black triangular flag in his hand. The word hero was exceptionally conspicuous on it. After a long silence, Jing Yuankong held the small flag in his hand and cupped his fists. Lord Hua, this happened in your territory, so you should know the ins and outs of the matter better than we do. I wonder if Lord Hua knows who is flying this flag? His tone was somewhat stiff. It could be heard that he was forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart. The 4 dead cultivators at the crossing calamity stage were all his disciples. His disciples had been killed, and 4 of them at once. It would be strange if he was not angry. Yin Baikong flew into a rage when he received the news. He had originally wanted to send his eldest disciple to deal with this, but he had volunteered to come. Naturally, he wanted revenge. Lord Hua. This form of address made Hua Zongming a little unhappy. When Yin Baikong saw him, he had to call him little brother, but this guy, who had reached the early spirit-severing realm, refused to call him senior. He finished the wine in the cup in one gulp, then said indifferently, I've never heard of such a person. I'm afraid the World Commerce Association will have to investigate this yourself. With the strength of the World Commerce Association, I'm sure the truth will come to light very quickly. This was an excuse. Jing Yuankong stared at the person on the bed. Hua Zongming did not mind at all. Amir Jr. also dared to point fingers in front of him. Next to the bed, a beautiful half-naked woman gently filled the empty cup in his hand with a golden pot. Outside the hall, Mi Russian descended and walked into the hall. He glanced at Jing Yuankong who was sitting at the side and bowed to Hua Zongming, Greetings, Master. Hua Zongming smiled and asked, Why are you here again? Is there a new development? Master is wise. Mi Russian took out the jade archive and brought it to the bed with both hands. After Hua Zongming received it, he returned to his seat. Hua Zongming held the jade archive in one hand and brought the wine cup to his lips with the other. As he drank, he injected his divine sense into it. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he spat out the wine in his mouth. He immediately sat up on the bed and looked at Jing Yuankong with a strange expression. Then, he continued reading the contents of the jade archive. Mi Russian did not seem surprised at all. Jing Yuankong, on the other hand, looked at the pair of master and disciple with a puzzled expression. He did not know what was inside the jade archive to make Hua Zongming lose his composure like this. He could not help asking, Lord Hua, does it contain information about Yin Wufeng? Cough cough. Hua Zongming tossed the jade archive over. Take a look for yourself. Jing Yuankong caught the jade archive and looked at him doubtfully again. He then injected his divine sense into it. Hua Zongming looked at him from the corner of his eyes with a smirk as if he was watching a show. As expected, Jing Yuankong's expression changed drastically and turned livid. He then roared, How dare you, scoundrel! How arrogant! His voice shook the great light hall. Hua Zongming immediately said in a cold tone, Jing Yuankong, do you think this is the World Chamber of Commerce? Is this a place where you can roar as you please? Jing Yuankong forcefully suppressed his rage and cupped his fists. Lord Hua, please don't blame me. I lost my composure for a moment. I'll have to discuss this matter with my master. I might have to trouble you again in the future. I'll take my leave now. Sigh. Forget it. I understand how you feel. You should go back and persuade your master to prepare the spirit stones as soon as possible. Otherwise, it'll be hard to say if things get out of hand. Go, go. Hua Zongming waved his hand with a smile. It was obvious that he was watching a joke. Jing Yuankong cupped his fists with a dark expression and disappeared from the great hall. He took the jade archive with him. Hua Zongming then threw his head back and laughed heartily. When he was done, he said, "Everyone, are you done watching the show? How much longer do you want to watch?" Mi Russian looked around in confusion. Those words were clearly not directed at him. 5 men and a woman slowly walked out from the back of the hall. Mi Russian was slightly taken aback. He immediately bowed and said, "Mi Russian greets the 5 seniors." These 5 people were his master Hua Zongming's close friends. They were all at the mid-divine transformation realm. They were Pu Taidong of Jinshan Nation, Yan Ji of Xiushui Nation, Mu Sang of Smokeless Nation, Miao Hanyuan of Tsang Yuan Nation, and Shu Xian of Women Nation. They were all lords of their own territories. The 5 of them nodded at Mi Russian and found a place to sit. The beautiful Shu Xian smiled. Jing Yuankong was furious just now, and third brother Hua was smiling so happily. Something good must have happened to Yin Baikong's grandson? Miao Hanyuan nodded. Hua Zongming, what's so funny? Tell us so we can laugh together. That's right. The 5 of us heard that something happened to Yin Baikong's grandson, so we came to watch the show. Pu Taidong said. Hua Zongming thought for a moment and couldn't help but laugh. He walked down barefooted and said, "I've been trying to guess what happened to Yin Baikong's grandson. I even suspected that Yin Baikong was the one who did it, trying to mess with me again. Otherwise, how many people in the cultivation world would dare to touch Yin Baikong's grandson? Who knew, haha. Unbelievable." The 5 of them looked at each other. Actually, even though they didn't say it out loud, they were worried that Yin Baikong was up to something. That was why they rushed over. They wanted to support Hua Zongming at the crucial moment, so that he wouldn't suffer at Yin Baikong's hands. The relationship between the 5 of them was one where they would all suffer together, one prosper together, and they would rely on each other. Shu Xian's bright eyes flickered as she said, "Third brother Hua, don't play riddles with us. What's going on?" Hua Zongming laughed and said, "Yin Baikong's grandson was kidnapped. That jade archive just now, it's a kidnapper. His granny, why does it sound so weird? When did kidnappers appear in the cultivation world? I'm dying of laughter, hee hee. Kidnap?" The 5 of them asked in unison. They looked at each other in dismay. Someone actually dared to kidnap Yin Baikong's grandson? That's right. It's a kidnap. The kidnapper specifically asked Yin Baikong to pay 200 million high-grade spirit stones in exchange for his grandson. Otherwise, he would teach Yin Baikong a lesson. Strong, this kidnapper is too strong. Hua Zongming pointed at Mi Russian and said, "Russian, read the contents of the Jade Archive to the seniors." "Yes." Mi Russian bowed. After thinking for a while, he immediately repeated the contents of the Jade Archive without missing a single word. When the 5 of them heard it, they all laughed so hard that they staggered from side to side. Even Yan Ji, who kept a straight face, was no exception. Pu Taidong laughed breathlessly and said, "Hua Zongming, this happened in your territory. Don't tell me you don't know who did it. Quick, tell us, who did this? He's too talented. If I don't make friends with him, I'll be letting myself down." "Yes, yes, yes. Quick, tell us." The few of them jeered together. At the side, Me Russian was sweating profusely. He actually saw the seniors acting like they were old and disrespectful, taking pleasure in someone else's misfortune. Hua Zongming spread his hands and shook his head, saying, "To be honest, I really don't know who dared to do this. If you don't believe me, I can swear to the heavens." When the 5 of them heard this, they were stunned. Mu Sang asked doubtfully, "In the cultivation world, the number of people who would dare to do such a thing to Yin Baikong can be counted on one hand. Everyone, think about it. Who could be the culprit?" The 5 of them immediately fell into deep thought. Miao Hanyuan recalled the contents of the Jade Archive and said, "Yin Baikong, I don't care if you're a demigod or a dog transformation cultivator. I've been a little short on cash lately, so I kidnapped your grandson." As he said this, he couldn't help but laugh and said, "To dare to say such things to Yin Baikong, it's obvious that you're not afraid of Yin Baikong turning against you. But I really can't think of anyone who would say that. It's one thing to call Yin Baikong a dog, but to actually call him his father. I think this person is a lunatic. He's obviously not following common sense." Yan Ji shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Lunatic?" Miao Hanyuan's eyes lit up and said, "Who would dare to speak to Yin Baikong in such an arrogant manner? Do you think it could be that person?" As he said this, he stretched out his index finger and waved it around. Hua Zongming was stunned for a moment and said, "You mean by Changchun?" Miao Hanyuan nodded and said, "That's right. Think about it. Under the heavens, who would dare to call Yin Baikong a dog, and even call him his father without fear of his revenge, other than by Changchun? No matter how much the other elders look down on Yin Baikong, they definitely wouldn't say such things. Otherwise, Yin Baikong would definitely fight him to the death. It's definitely not him." Shu Xian furrowed her brows and said, "Although Bai Changchun's actions are crazy, he's a proud and arrogant person. He definitely wouldn't stoop to doing such sneaky things. Everyone, think about it. If he asked Yin Baikong to fork out 200 million high-grade spirit stones, Yin Baikong would definitely be more than happy to do it. He might even personally come knocking on his door to pull some strings. Would he even need to kidnap Yin Baikong's grandson?" The others nodded in unison, thinking that it made sense. Bai Changchun definitely wouldn't stoop to doing such a thing. Hua Zongming waved his hand and said, "Everyone, don't make wild guesses. You won't be able to guess it. Didn't you say to pay the spirit stones in 3 days to redeem him? When it's time to collect the spirit stones, he'll have to show himself, right? Let's go and take a look. Won't we know who it is then?" Chapter 473. Yin Baikong has many children and grandchildren. Do you think he would fork out 200 million high-grade spirit stones for a commoner's grandson? Yan Ji shook his head. The kidnapper's asking price is too high. He's demanding an exorbitant price. Who told Yin Baikong's Tianxia Chamber of Commerce to be so rich? If we don't demand an exorbitant price from him, who should we target? Shu Xian covered her mouth and laughed. This isn't a question of how much a grandson is worth. The key is that with so many children and grandchildren watching him, Yin Baikong has no choice but to pay. The few of them thought of Yin Baikong, a famous old stallion in the cultivation world, and couldn't help but laugh. Pu Taidong suddenly waved his hand. "I think we shouldn't be the only ones who know about this. Since we want to watch the show, let's make it bigger. Let the entire cultivation world see if Yin Baikong, that old fox, is willing to fork out this sum of money. Whenever I think of this old fox scheming against others, I get annoyed. I have to publicize it for him." "That's not a good idea." Hua Zongming hesitated. "When the time comes, my Dayan nation will become the target of public criticism. Yin Baikong will inevitably come looking for me to punish me. You worry too much. When the time comes, you can just push the blame away and deny it. Just say that the news might be from the kidnappers. This is a bit of a mouthful. Kidnappers appearing in the cultivation world? Just say that it was spread by the kidnappers. I guarantee that Yin Baikong won't be able to confirm that it was you. Pu Taidong waved his hand at the few of them. The deadline given by the kidnappers is 3 days. Everyone, hurry up and spread the news. Otherwise, you won't be able to make it in time. Hee hee. The few of them laughed in unison. Hua Zongming also smiled and nodded. In Baiwan Nation's embassy, Furong and Wenqing couldn't hold it in any longer and ran out to go shopping. Yu Qianzhou didn't stop them. He believed that as long as they didn't cause any trouble, no one would be able to tell that Furong was a cultivator after taking the aura-concealing pill. Yu Qianzhou was still lying on the swing with his eyes closed. The Tianxia Chamber of Commerce mentioned in the Jade Archive in his hand had piqued his interest. The World Chamber of Commerce was an organization that specialized in doing business in the cultivation world. Its headquarters was located in Tuan Country, which was similar to the 100 Flowers Valley in the cultivation world of China. It was the largest trading place in the cultivation world of various countries. However, it was different from the 100 Flowers Valley. Not only did it have a fixed business, but it also traded with other countries. It could also be said that they would do whatever it took to make money. Lu Wanxian had been to Cornucopia a few times. Cornucopia was the headquarters of the World Commerce Association. The Jade Archive recorded the unusually flourishing trade scene in Cornucopia. It was far livelier than the one in the 100 Flowers Valley. Here, the cultivation world of various countries was not like the cultivation world of China, which was secluded and did not interact with the outside world. They traded freely, and the cornucopia was the place where they traded the most. Coincidentally, this World Commerce Chamber belonged to Yin Baikong, so some people said that he was the richest person in the entire cultivation world. Yin Baikong, the richest man in the cultivation world. Yu Qianzhou smacked his lips twice. He felt like drooling. He couldn't help but think of all the ways to make money from his previous life. He had already made up his mind. After he settled the matters here, he would definitely go to the most prosperous cornucopia in the cultivation world. While he was lying on the swing, drooling, he didn't know that his actions had already become the biggest scandal in the cultivation world under the influence of some people with ulterior motives. Yin Baikong, the grandson of a late-stage divine transformation expert, had been kidnapped. The kidnappers demanded 200 million high-grade spirit stones as ransom. Even Jing Yuankong, who was flying at high speed in the sky, would not have thought that someone would use the method of communication to spread the news in the Jade Archive he had on him to the various countries. Even the location to hand over the spirit stones was clearly stated. On top of Cornucopia's God of Wealth peak, Yin Baikong suddenly and inexplicably received many messages from his old friends. They were all asking about his grandson's kidnapping and the ransom demanded by the kidnappers. Yin Baikong was completely confused by the questions. He only knew that something had happened to his grandson. Whether or not he had been kidnapped, he didn't know either. He had even mentally prepared himself for the worst. At the same time, even if everyone was asking the truth, how could others have known about it before the kidnappers had even demanded ransom from him? Was there such a thing as a kidnapper? On top of God of Wealth Peak, a black-robed Yin Baikong stood alone under a pine tree. He looked at the billowing sea of clouds in front of him with a gloomy expression. After a while, he turned his head and saw a black dot flying towards him at high speed. In the blink of an eye, the black dot landed in front of him and bowed. It was his second disciple, Jing Yuankong. Yuankong, you're back so soon. Did you find out anything? Yin Baikong's expression relaxed a little as he asked. Jing Yuankong paused for a moment. He didn't know what to say about this matter. Yin Baikong immediately felt that something was wrong. He asked in a deep voice, "What's wrong?" "Master, Wufeng, he's been kidnapped." Kidnapped. Jing Yuankong suddenly felt that the word kidnapper was a little funny. To think that there would be kidnappers in the cultivation world. However, he still braced himself and said, the kidnappers demanded 200 million high-grade spirit stones as ransom. Yin Baikong's face twitched as he said, so it's true. I thought that bunch of old fools were playing a joke on me. What? Master, you already know about it? Jing Yuankong was stunned. That's impossible. When Hua Zongming's disciple received the Jade Archive from the kidnappers, he immediately sent it to Hua Zongming. After that, I took the Jade Archive and rushed back immediately. Could it be that Hua Zongming spread the news on purpose to make fun of Master? No, I know Hua Zongming's character very well. He wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Looks like the person who kidnapped Wufeng intentionally spread the news. He wanted to make fun of me. Who is this person? He's so unscrupulous. Yin Baikong thought for a moment, then stretched out his hand and asked, what's written on the Jade Archive? Hand it over and let me have a look. Jing Yuankong suddenly remembered that the words on the Jade Archive were too provocative. It really wasn't suitable for his master to read. However, he didn't dare to refuse, so he reminded, Master, it's best if you don't read it. What's written on it isn't pleasant to hear. In short, they're asking for 200 million high-grade spirit stones in exchange for Wufeng's return. If they can't get the spirit stones, they'll do something detrimental to Master. I'd like to see who has the guts to do something detrimental to me. Yin Baikong stretched out his hand again and said in a deep voice, hand it over. Jing Yuankong knew that he couldn't refuse anymore. When he took out the Jade Archive and handed it over, he was already prepared to bear the brunt of Yin Baikong's wrath. Yin Baikong took the Jade Archive and infused it with his divine sense. Even though he was mentally prepared, he was still greatly stimulated by what he read. Hee. Sinister laughter escaped from his mouth as the Jade Archive in his hand soundlessly turned into dust in an instant. A strong wind blew across the mountaintop. Gradually, not even the slightest rustling could be felt. In the blink of an eye, it was eerily quiet. Even the air seemed to have frozen. A terrifying aura slowly spread across the mountaintop. Even Jing Yuankong felt a little overwhelmed as he secretly tried to resist it. To Jing Yuankong's surprise, he had underestimated his master's shrewdness. His master didn't fly into a rage. Not long after, the mountaintop returned to its original state. Yuankong, what do you think of this? Yin Baikong's heart was burning with rage. However, he calmly looked at the rumbling sea of clouds and asked. Jing Yuankong replied awkwardly, Master, I really can't think of anyone in the cultivation world who would dare to do such a thing to you. If there's anyone, I can only think of that person in the demon's domain. Are you talking about Bai Changchun? Yin Baikong's pupils shrank as he turned around and asked. Then, he shook his head and denied himself, No. I would believe anyone. It's definitely impossible to say that it was Bai Changchun. You've seen his strength in the East Sea. His cultivation is close to that of a half-immortal. If he really wanted to come to my God of Fortune Peak and take away 200 million high-grade spirit stones, it would be as easy as pie. Who could stop him? Besides, he wouldn't stoop to such a thing. After a pause, he added, I do hope that he was the one who did it. Forget 200 million high-grade spirit stones, I'd even give him 1 billion. Most importantly, even if I delivered myself to him, he might not even want it. He's a god. What a pity. Master, Jing Yuankong frowned and said, what do you think we should do? Are we really going to use spirit stones to ransom him? Yin Baikong did not reply to his disciple. Instead, he asked, that kidnapper said he wanted my name to be immortalized. If I don't use spirit stones to exchange for Wufeng's return, what method do you think he'll use to make my name immortalized? This disciple doesn't know either. Most importantly, we're in the open while they're in the dark. We don't even know who it is. There's really no way to guard against it, Jing Yuankong said with a bitter smile. He thought to himself that if a person who could do such a thing really did something shameless, there were many ways to make his name immortalized. It was impossible to guard against it. Humph. Baikong sneered, I'll give you the spirit stones. I want to see who this person is. I want to see if he has the ability to take the spirit stones from me. Jing Yuankong cupped his hands and said, Master, don't worry. Leave this matter to me. I'll definitely find that person. No. Baikong waved his hand and said, since this person dares to provoke me, I'm afraid you can't handle him. I'll make a trip personally and deal with this person. Ah. Jing Yuankong hurriedly persuaded, there's no need to trouble Master. If Master is worried about me going alone, let eldest senior brother go with me, say no more. I've made up my mind. This matter can only succeed. I can't let the cultivation world laugh at me. It's safer for me to make a trip personally. You and your senior brother just watch over this place. As soon as Baikong finished speaking, his figure turned into a series of afterimages and disappeared into the sea of clouds. Actually, it wasn't just Baikong. Almost half of the top experts in the cultivation world were rushing towards Daeong City. Apart from watching the show, the most important thing was to see who dared to kidnap Baikong's grandson. Now that such a big thing had happened, there might be another change in the cultivation world. The war over there was not over yet. They had to be concerned. Although Yu Qianzhou's matter was big, he only wanted to quietly make a fortune. In his calculations, he believed that Baikong would not reveal such a shameful matter. However, he didn't know that not only had the matter been leaked, but the entire cultivation world knew about it. Daeong City of Daeong Kingdom was about to become a place of great turmoil. Wu Sihai definitely didn't know about this. If Wu Sihai knew, he wouldn't be surprised. No matter where that kid went, that place wouldn't have peace. The key was that this kid couldn't settle down and was addicted to causing trouble. Chapter 474. Demon Domain, Obedient Island. Nongzhu sat on the opening of the bird's nest that Yu Qianzhou had built, his legs dangling outside. He looked at Ziyi's nondescript actions with a gloomy expression. From time to time, he would stare at the jade archive in his hand in a daze. In truth, he didn't see any benefit in cultivating the techniques in the archive. He had even sneaked off to a deserted place to try out a few techniques, but he didn't feel any effect. The only feeling he got was that he was tormenting someone. Ziyi also didn't feel any effect. Every time he came to ask his master for an explanation, Nongzhu would just give him vague answers. Ziyi himself was also at his wits' end. Nongzhu was truly speechless as he looked at the birdhouse he was sitting on. He couldn't imagine what Yu Qianzhou was thinking about all day, that he would build a house on a tree. Ah! Extraordinary people doing extraordinary things. Nongzhu looked in the direction of Twilight Valley and sighed. For the past few days, Bai Changchun and the southern Ming ancestor had been going there almost every day. Suddenly, there was a ripple in the air, coming from the center of the island. Nongzhu's eyes brightened. With a yelp of surprise, he teleported to the front of the house. The ground was filled with high-grade spirit stones, arranged in an extremely complex pattern to form a pentagon. This was a message array that the southern Ming ancestor had set up, fearing that Xianxian Island might need him for something urgent. This was to make it easier for disciples to contact him. Nongzhu immediately jumped into the empty space in the middle of the pentagon and yelled, "Who is it? Who is it? What's the matter? Master, you're not master. Who are you?" The voice replied in surprise. "I am your uncle Nongzhu. If you have something to say, spit it out." Nongzhu's eyes turned, and he corrected himself. "Your master is currently busy. He said that if you have anything to say, tell me first, and I will pass it on to him." "So it's Senior Nongzhu." The other party hesitated for a moment, then decided that it wasn't anything important, so he relayed the news that an old friend of the southern Ming ancestor had sent to Xianxian Island. There's such a thing? Nongzhu was stunned. Suddenly, an angry shout came from the sky. Nongzhu, what are you doing? It was the voice of Nan Ming Grand Elder. Without saying a word, Nongzhu hurriedly jumped out of the communication formation. Bai Changchun and the great ancestor of the south rushed over. The latter was furious and wanted to fight Nongzhu to the death. Bai Changchun also couldn't allow the two of them to fight on Obedient Island. With a flick of his finger, a wall of light appeared and blocked the two of them. The two of them stared at each other. Bai Changchun looked at Nongzhu and frowned. Nongzhu, what nonsense did you say to Xianxian Island? He was also a little angry. After all, Ancestor Nan Ming was his guest. If Nongzhu made trouble, it was no different from not giving him face. I didn't say anything. Xianxian Island sent me a message. You guys weren't here, so I listened to it for him, Nongzhu explained. Stop it. You're meddling in other people's business. Ancestor Nan Ming spat. He also knew that he couldn't fight with Bai Changchun here, so he jumped into the communication formation and asked Xianxian Island what was going on. After a while, Ancestor Nan Ming walked out with his teeth bared. Nongzhu, who was beside him, also pinched her chin and thought about something. The two of them were just quarreling, but now they didn't say a word. In the end, Bai Changchun was stunned. He didn't know what the hell was wrong with the two of them. They actually started to play deep. Zi, who heard her masters quarreling, also ran over drenched in sweat. She didn't see the fiery scene she imagined, but saw three mature old men. Nongzhu, what's going on? Bai Changchun stopped guessing and asked directly. If I was still in the South Sea purple bamboo forest, someone would have sent me a message. Nongzhu said happily. Yin Baikong's grandson, who is the Prime Minister of Daong Nation, was kidnapped. Not only did the kidnappers want Yin Baikong to pay 200 million upper-grade spirit stones as ransom, they even scolded Yin Baikong. They said that if he doesn't see the spirit stones, Yin Baikong's name will be immortalized in the cultivation world. Bai Changchun looked at Ancestor Nan Ming with a questioning gaze. The latter nodded and couldn't help but laugh. Bai Changchun frowned slightly. Although he didn't care about Yin Baikong, he really couldn't think of anyone else who would dare to treat Yin Baikong like this in the cultivation world. He couldn't help but ask, who kidnapped Yin Baikong's grandson? Nongzhu and Ancestor Nan Ming shook their heads together. The latter said, we still don't know who it is, but I believe that the truth will be revealed 2 days later when we pay the spirit stones to exchange for him. Yes. Who is it? It's obvious that they targeted Yin Baikong's World Chamber of Commerce, which is the richest in the cultivation world. They're really bold. Nongzhu rubbed her chin and said. The few of them fell into deep thought. For a while, they really couldn't think of who did this. Zi, who was at the side, had a face full of doubt. Her eyeballs kept rolling, and her suspicious expression became more and more obvious. After hesitating for a long time, she said weakly, Master, it's very likely that Yu Qianqiu did it. Ah! The few of them were startled by his words. Even Ancestor Nan Ming was no exception. During this period of time, he had always been curious about what kind of disciple a person like Bai Changchun would take, so he had asked a lot about Yu Qianqiu. Zi, shut up. You can't talk about this kind of thing. With your status as senior Bai, how could his disciple do? Nongzhu reprimanded her righteously, but she couldn't continue speaking. Her face was full of confusion. With Bai Changchun's character, he definitely wouldn't do those sneaky things. But that disciple of his. There was really nothing that he didn't dare to do. It was indeed a little hard to say. Why are you so sure that it's Yu Qianqiu who did it? Nongzhu asked. Zi shook her head and said, no reason. I just feel that as long as it's related to spirit stones, I think it's possible that he did it. She had been with Yu Qianqiu for a long time, so she could be considered to know him quite well. That guy wouldn't even let a dead person go for spirit stones. Did he need any other reason to suspect him? Nongzhu glanced at Bai Changchun, whose eyebrows were twitching, and shouted, "What kind of logic is this? How can there be such a hasty judgment?" Although she said this, she secretly remembered that as long as it was related to spirit stones, she could first suspect that kid. Good idea. Ancestor Nanming also heard the fishy conversation between the master and disciple. He stuck his red-haired head over and asked curiously, could it really be Yu Qianqiu who did it? Impossible. Bai Changchun shook his head and said, my disciple's cultivation hasn't even reached the crossing calamity stage. No matter how bold he is, he wouldn't dare to provoke Yin Bai Kong. Ancestor Nanming looked at him with a strange expression and said in a seemingly unintentional manner, maybe he's relying on you as his master to back him up. There's no reason for him to be afraid of Yin Bai Kong. If Yin Bai Kong knew that you're his master, would he still dare to touch him? Probably not. Bai Changchun denied again. However, when he thought of the 3 jade pendants he gave to Yu Qianqiu, he more or less had some doubts in his heart. Old Bai, don't speak too early. Nongzhu laughed and said, the timing is too coincidental. He just went to wander around the various countries, and that Prime Minister of Dian Kingdom was kidnapped. Moreover, I can't think of anyone who would have the guts to touch Yin Bai Kong's people. Your disciple is extremely bold. This has nothing to do with the level of cultivation. Nonsense. Bai Changchun swung his sleeves and turned around to return to the big house. The 3 of them looked at each other in dismay. Nongzhu swayed a few times with his hands behind his back and nodded slightly, no way. How can I miss such a lively event? I want to see who the culprit is. Master, I'll go too. Zi happily pulled his sleeves. What are you going to do? Nongzhu asked. Zi said plausibly, I'm going to find Yu Qianqiu and ask him if he's the one who did this. Stay here obediently. If you dare to run around, don't say that I don't recognize you as my disciple. Nongzhu angrily said in a loud voice. It was unknown how many times this girl mentioned Yu Qianqiu every day. Nongzhu faintly felt that something was wrong. He subconsciously avoided that confusing thought and didn't want to poke through that thin layer of window paper. Ziyi's mouth slightly pouted. She didn't dare to beg again when her master was angry. She could only watch Nongzhu fly away quickly. Ancestor Nanming grabbed his red beard and looked outside the house thoughtfully. On Wuxia Island, the cultivators of various countries received a decree at the same time. They were asked to investigate whether there was an organization or a person called Hero in the cultivation world of China. In Wuxia Palace, Yin Bai Kong's disciple Chang Mandong was the first to question, young palace lord, I heard that you had a group of people called Hero in the past, right? I heard that An Kuang-tsung was defeated by your hero. Now, with the support of Man Hu and his fellow disciples, Yan Zhuixing's status in Wuxia Island was higher than his father's. He basically had the right to make decisions on all matters. Hero? Yan Zhuixing had a cold smile on his face. Before this, Man Hu had already told him about what happened in Dian Kingdom and asked him about the hero. Yan Zhuixing's answer was the same as his answer to Chang Mandong, that's right, the hero is my people. These people are all on the island as you can see. But they have absolutely nothing to do with the hero of Dian Kingdom. Yen Bugui, who was sitting in the middle, looked at his son without batting an eyelid. He didn't understand. They obviously did it in the name of the hero. The real hero was definitely not them. But why did his son admit that he was the hero? Although he had doubts in his heart, he wouldn't expose his son's background. Now that the father and son were relying on each other, they had to speak the same words. In front of a group of wolves, the only way for father and son to protect themselves was to unite. In other words, someone deliberately used the name of the hero to cause trouble in Dian Kingdom? Chang Mandong frowned. He also believed what Yan Zhuixing said was true. The cultivators of various countries on the island were monitoring each other. It was impossible for Yan Zhuixing to send people to cause trouble under everyone's eyes. Moreover, the father and son of the Yan family needed their support. How would they dare to undermine them now? Chapter 475. Senior Chang, I think there are two possibilities. Yan Zhuixing slowly walked in front of him and said, first, someone wants to use the hero's name to cause trouble and sow discord between us. Second, there might be a person or organization with the same name as the hero. Senior Chang, what do you think? It's also possible. Chang Mandong said perfunctorily and turned to leave Limitless Palace. The others also slowly dispersed. No one expressed any doubts. Obviously, like Chang Mandong, they all agreed with Yan Zhuixing's words. Regardless of whether this news was important or not, it had to be spread back to the various countries. Most of the people in the hall gradually left. Yan Bugui gave his son a look. Once the father and son arrived at the secret chamber of the back palace, Yan Bugui couldn't wait to ask, Xing, what's wrong? The real hero is obviously not us. He was stunned by his own words. It was as if he was saying that the father and son were not the real hero. What I mean is, why do you have to take the blame for the hero? Yan Bugui explained. Take what blame? Yan Zhuixing said indifferently, for the Chinese cultivation world, it doesn't matter if we are the hero or not. Are we still afraid of their revenge? Anyway, we have to fight to the death. It doesn't matter. For the Dian Kingdom, what does the hero there have to do with us? There's no need to say that the hero is us. I don't understand what you mean. Do you have other plans? Yan Bugui asked. Father, if I say it's not us, do you think we can clean up with those people in such a short time? Directly admitting it will remove the suspicion of us and the Dian Kingdom. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes and said, also, Father, did you notice something interesting? Yan Bugui nodded silently and agreed with his son's words. When he heard the latter part, he slightly paused and said, what interesting thing did you notice? Yan Zhuixing thought for a while and said, recently, I received news that Yu Qianzhou led a few hundred people to kill more than 1,000 people from the Daluo sect. And Yu Qianzhou even defeated 2 experts at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. To be honest, when I heard this news, I was very shocked. That's right. This news can be confirmed. I've also heard about it. Yan Bugui nodded and said, I also heard that Yu Qianzhou has left the Cultivation Alliance and is now missing. That's the problem. Yan Zhuixing sneered, Father, don't you think it's strange? This Yu Qianzhou just disappeared from China, and a hero appeared in Dayong Nation. Isn't it too much of a coincidence? Yan Bugui was surprised. You mean, Yu Qianzhou is the mysterious hero? Impossible, I heard that Yin Baikong is a soul-severing late-stage expert, and his subordinates are extremely powerful. I believe that Yu Qianzhou wouldn't dare to provoke him. Although I don't know why Yu Qianzhou wanted to provoke Yin Baikong, I heard that when Yu Qianzhou left the Cultivation Alliance, his subordinates were all masked and dressed in black. This is exactly the same as the heroes of the past. Yan Zhuixing's eyes flickered and said, Father, do you still remember that Yu Qianzhou tried his best to push the various crimes of the heroes onto us? Others didn't know that he was lying, but us father and son were very clear about it. However, that kid had a sharp tongue, and we provoked public anger at that time, so it was hard for us to defend ourselves. Actually, based on our actions at that time, everyone wanted to kill us, but why did he want us to bear all the crimes of the heroes? Hearing this, Yan Bugui also understood his son's meaning and slowly nodded. He wanted the fake heroes to bear all the crimes, and let the real heroes get away with it. What a ruthless fellow. Listening to your analysis, there's no doubt that even if that kid isn't a hero, he must be related to one. That's not right? Yen Bugue immediately reacted and said, since you guessed it was that kid, why didn't you expose him in front of everyone just now? I'm sure that he would be hunted down everywhere in the foreign cultivation world, with nowhere to hide, and would definitely die. Just in time to take revenge for us. That kid is already unpopular in the Chinese cultivation world, and now he ran to the foreign cultivation world to take a risk out of desperation. If he accidentally dies, then so be it, but if he doesn't die, that kid is very cunning, I reckon he won't die so easily. Who knows, he might even be able to make a name for himself. Yan Zhuixing turned around and said with a smile, Father, don't you think that if we have something that can kill that kid, it might be of some use to us in the future? You're saying, if that guy really does make a name for himself in the foreign cultivation world, we can use this to threaten him at the crucial moment? Yen Bugue finally understood. That's right, I don't believe that he dares to go against a huge force like Yin Baikong. With this in our hands, when the time comes, no matter in the Chinese cultivation world or the foreign cultivation world, he will have to listen to us obediently. Yan Zhuixing smiled with some satisfaction and said, so, why should I reveal Yu Qianzhou's background now? If we do that, what's in it for us? Keeping Yu Qianzhou's weakness is the most beneficial thing for us. Yen Bugue looked at his son and nodded with satisfaction. With such a son, what more could he ask for? The father and son hid in the secret room and made every possible plan. But when the time came to face Yu Qianzhou, would these plans really work? After all, man proposes, God disposes, and the world is unpredictable. In the embassy of Baiwan Kingdom, when Yu Yuan received two pieces of news, one bad and one good. The bad news was that because of the disappearance of the Prime Minister of Dayan Kingdom, they decided to postpone the selection of the prince consort, so everyone would definitely have to stay for a period of time. The good news was that Baiwan Kingdom sent him a message, asking him to entertain Mr. Nongzhu well. An early divine transformation cultivator from the sage sect, which the royal family relied on, had come to visit Mr. Nongzhu. When Yu Yuan heard this news, he immediately became excited. To be able to meet the top expert of the sage sect was a good thing, and he might even be rewarded with elixirs. He originally wanted to tell Yu Qianzhou about this in advance, but he felt that it was too shallow to do so. Mr. Nongzhu was a figure of the same generation as the elder ancestor, why would he care about an expert from the sage sect? If he told Mr. Nongzhu about it, he might be suspected of making Mr. Nongzhu wait, and he was afraid that it would make Mr. Nongzhu unhappy. After thinking about it, Wen Yuan decided that it was better not to say it. However, it was his self-righteous decision that caused Yu Qianzhou to complain again and again. At Huazhongming's Light Shine Peak, there were many top experts of the cultivation world gathered. Light Shine Peak could be said to have never been so lively. There were more than 100 divine transformation experts. Just the reception alone was enough to make some of the disciples on the mountain extremely busy. In fact, this was something that could not be helped. Since everyone had come to Huazhongming's territory, they naturally had to greet the master first. After these people arrived one after another, everyone thought that it was about time, but who knew that an unexpected person would come? Yin Baikong had personally arrived. When Yin Baikong entered the Great Light Palace and saw this group of people, his face immediately turned ashen. Needless to say, they were definitely here to see him. Otherwise, Huazhongming's Light Shine Peak would not have the face to attract so many divine transformation experts to chat and brag. Everyone is indeed in a good mood. I did not think that my grandson would be able to attract so many people. Yin Baikong looked around and sneered. These words were a little harsh, it was obvious that he was scolding everyone. However, this old man was very strong, and no one else who had reached the divine transformation final stage had come, so no one could suppress this old man. Everyone could only pretend that they did not hear him. Huazhongming shook his head and smiled bitterly. Just as he was about to invite him to take a seat, he suddenly heard someone laughing outside. Yin Baikong, your skin is really thick. You have so many grandchildren, who cares about all of them? We are all flocking to the hero who kidnapped your grandson. How can we not see such a hero? Everyone was stunned when they heard this voice. There were not many people in the cultivation world who dared to talk back to Yin Bai Kong. But from the familiar tone, they immediately thought of who it was. Xiaofan of the country of women even stood up and said in high spirits, "It's Nongzhu." Everyone followed Yin Bai Kong and turned around. They saw Nongzhu walking in with a smile and cupped her hands in greeting. Huh! The hall was instantly filled with all kinds of laughter. Most people stood up and greeted, "Nongzhu is here." Compared to the scene when Yin Bai Kong came in, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. One could imagine that Nongzhu's popularity in the cultivation world was not bad. Yin Bai Kong coldly snorted. "What are you doing here instead of staying in your South Sea purple bamboo forest? Yin God of Fortune, this is Light Illumination Peak, not your God of Wealth Peak. Besides, my legs are my own. I can go wherever I want. What can you do about it?" Nongzhu flung her sleeves and disdainfully mixed into the crowd, laughing and joking with the crowd. Yin Bai Kong was rendered speechless by Nongzhu. If it was someone else, he would have already made a move. The key was that the person behind Nongzhu was too strong. Anyone would have to think twice before acting. It's just a small matter, no need to be angry. Come, please take a seat. Hua Zongming was not like Nongzhu, who had such a strong backing. He still had to be a good host. No need. Since I've greeted the host, I'll take my leave first. Yin Bai Kong flung his sleeves and left. Before he left, he gave Nongzhu a deep look. Wait until Bai Chongchun goes to the Eastern Holy Land and I'll take care of you. Let's see how long you can be arrogant then. Hua Zongming walked back speechlessly. He pointed at Nongzhu in the crowd and shook his head. You. Why do you have to lower yourself to his level? Can't you just deal with it? Why do you have to form a grudge? Let's see what you'll do after Bai Chongchun goes to the Eastern Holy Land. He. I don't believe that the cultivation world belongs to Yin Bai Kong alone. If he really dares to bully me, I'll have to ask Wen Lanfeng to help me get rid of this old man first. Nongzhu said nonchalantly. Everyone was speechless. Only then did they remember that besides having a good relationship with the world's #1 expert, this guy had also saved the life of the world's #2 expert, Wen Lanfeng. If Wen Lanfeng stood up for him, even Yin Bai Kong would have to think twice about the consequences of making a move on Nongzhu. Well said. If Mr. Nongzhu had a lot of scruples, he wouldn't be the Mr. Nongzhu who played around with the world. A sweet voice sounded. Xiaofan walked over with a glass of wine and gently pushed it in front of Nongzhu. Chapter 476. Nongzhu was in a daze, while Xuxin looked at him shyly and affectionately. A glass of wine was placed between them. It was not the aroma of wine, but thousands of strands of love, trying to entangle Nongzhu. The group was silent, and they all looked at Nongzhu. The past between the two of them was no longer a secret among this group of people. Nongzhu not only had a high cultivation in the cultivation world, but he was also famous for his flirtatiousness. Besides, he was born with an extraordinary appearance. Few women could escape from his claws when he stretched out his little claws. Everyone knew that Nongzhu was Xuxin's lover, and they had a good time. However, Nongzhu was too much of a playboy. No woman could keep him. Perhaps he was tired of playing with Xuxin, so he quietly kicked Xuxin away and hooked up with another famous beauty in the cultivation world. But Xuxin's cultivation was not weaker than his. Unlike other women, she could not be kicked at will. As a result, she killed the beauty that Nongzhu hooked up with and kept pestering Nongzhu, so Nongzhu avoided her everywhere. In the end, Nongzhu had no choice but to move to Shuntian Island for many years. Bai Changchun's demon domain was not a place that anyone could break into, but Xuxin risked her life to break into it. As a result, she almost lost her life in Bai Changchun's hands. After all, she was a woman who had slept with him. Nongzhu could not watch her die, so he saved her. As a result, Bai Changchun figured out the reason and got angry. Nongzhu was too much. What did he think Shantian Island was? As a result, the adulterous couple was kicked out of the demon domain by Bai Changchun. Nobody knew what happened. As soon as they got out of the demon domain, they fell in love again. But not long after, Nongzhu had a relapse and disappeared again. When Xuxin found him again, he had already accepted a very small baby as his apprentice. This time, it was useless for Xuxin to pester him. Nongzhu swore on the spot. In order to let his apprentice grow up safely, he wanted to accumulate virtue for his apprentice. He swore that he would never touch any woman before he broke through the late Huashan realm, or he would die a horrible death. Since Nongzhu was so ruthless, what else could Xu Xian do? She could only return to womanland and hope that he could break through to the final stage of demigod as soon as possible. However, this guy's actions made her very disappointed. Although he didn't touch women anymore, he still wandered around and didn't pay attention to cultivation at all. She really didn't know how he could break through to the soul formation final stage. Now that these two enemies had met, everyone couldn't help but reveal expressions of ridicule, wanting to watch the show. Well, why are you here? Nongzhu smiled awkwardly. Xu Xian's eyes flickered. She bit her lips and said, I haven't seen you for a long time. Let me pour a cup of wine for you. May you remember that we used to depend on each other. This was simply a naked confession in front of everyone, without any reservation. There's wine, there's no need to trouble yourself. Nongzhu reached out to grab the wine glass on the table, but someone slapped him hard on the back of his hand and shouted, Get your hands off it. It's mine. He wanted to grab the other cups, but found that they were all taken away in an instant. Nongzhu looked around and suddenly found that he had entered a wolf's den. Everyone was staring at him fiercely. It seemed that if he didn't drink a cup of wine, he would offend everyone. A group of beasts. Nongzhu cursed in his heart. He took the wine glass from Xu Xian's hand and drank it up. After thanking her, he returned the glass to her. Seeing that she seemed to have something to say, Nongzhu hurriedly made an obeisance to the crowd and said, I almost forgot that I still have something to do. I'll leave first. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. Xu Xian was stunned on the spot. There was a burst of laughter in the hall. That guy claimed to be free and unfettered. Finally, he seized the opportunity to disgust him. After the laughter, they found that they were surrounded by people who didn't get along well with them. Immediately, they looked around the hall coldly and found their lovers to chat with. This movement greatly touched the crowd. Just think about it, only Nongzhu, who didn't seek fame or fortune and had no desires, could be so popular. After teleporting, Nongzhu immediately flew in the direction of Deyang City. He was very depressed. If he had known that Xu Xian was here, he wouldn't have gone to Guangguang Peak. After flying for a short distance, he heard someone shout behind him, Mr. Nongzhu, please wait a moment. Nongzhu looked back and recognized the person. It was the rising star of the Wen family of Bai Wan Kingdom, Wen Rui, an early divine transformation cultivator. She had seen him in the Great Light Hall just now, but she didn't have time to greet him as she was in a hurry. She stopped and asked, Wen Rui, what's the matter? Are you going to Deyang City? Wen Rui asked with a bow. Yes. Nongzhu asked suspiciously, what's wrong? Is there a problem? I guessed that you are also going to Deyang City, so I said goodbye in advance and came to catch up with you. I want to go to Deyang City with you. Wen Rui said with a smile. Oh. Then let's go together. Nongzhu said indifferently. So the two of them flew together and soared high up in the sky. Wen Rui said as he flew, recently, I learned that the younger generation of the Wen family had accidentally offended you. I am very grateful that you did not take it to heart. Ah, what do you mean? Nongzhu was a little puzzled by his words. Wen Rui said with a smile, you don't have to hide anything for the younger generation. They have already reported everything back to Baiwan Kingdom. Since you are not going to pursue it, I will not pursue it either. Nongzhu was already flying in the clouds and his words were completely out of place, so she was completely confused. Then she heard him say, oh yes, you are staying in the embassy. Did they treat you poorly? These words were like a dose of refreshing medicine that made Nongzhu's thoughts quickly become active. She squinted her eyes and a sharp cold light flashed across them. She casually answered Wen Rui, but in her heart, she snorted coldly. It seems that someone is impersonating me. This Deyang city is really strange. Not only did someone kidnap Yin Baikong's grandson, but there is also someone impersonating me. When these two things were linked together, Nongzhu was slightly startled. She thought to herself, could it be that these two things were done by that kid? Otherwise, why would that guy impersonate me out of all people? He already had a plan in his heart. If the person impersonating him in Baiwan Kingdom's embassy was really Yu Qianzhou, then there was no doubt that Yin Baikong's grandson was kidnapped by that guy. With this thought, Nongzhu could not help but look forward to it. A trace of a smirk appeared on her face. She was anxious to see if that person was really that kid. Not long after, both of them landed in Baiwan Kingdom's embassy. The sudden appearance of the two surprised the guards in the residence. Wen Yuyuan did not know who they were. Fortunately, Wen Bai knew Wen Rui and avoided a misunderstanding. Wen Rui felt a little strange. Why did these two juniors seem to have never seen Nongzhu before? Didn't they say that both of them had dealings with Nongzhu before? He could not help but ask, Mr. Nongzhu. Nongzhu raised his hand and stopped him from continuing. He smiled faintly and said, please take me to see Mr. Nongzhu. He and I are old friends. Wen Rui immediately let out an ah. He did not know what he was up to. Wen Yuyuan and Wen Bai did not dare to be negligent. They immediately bowed to accept the order and led the way. The small courtyard was green and quiet. Usually, no one would dare to disturb it. However, a series of footsteps broke the tranquility of the small courtyard. Zhang Peng immediately turned around and shouted, how dare you? Who dares to trespass here? Suddenly, he saw two cultivators with storage bags following behind Wen Yuyuan and Wen Bai. Zhang Peng's pupils shrank slightly. He could not see through their cultivation. Nongzhu glanced at Zhang Peng and her eyes fell on the swing. There was a person lying on it. He did not even open his eyes and looked completely calm in the face of chaos. To Nongzhu's surprise, this person was not Yu Qianzhou. Wen Yuyuan was about to explain when he heard Wen Rui shout in a deep voice, who are you two? He also had a vague idea of what was going on. Who is shouting here? Yu Qianzhou slowly opened his eyes and turned his head to look. It would have been fine if he did not look, but when he did, he was shocked. He immediately jumped up from the swing and stared at Nongzhu. Nongzhu's shocked eyes gradually melted and a trace of a smile appeared on her face. Yu Qianzhou's voice, Yu Qianzhou's figure, Yu Qianzhou's cunning eyes, and the unfathomable cultivation. This guy actually disguised himself. If it were not for his jump and his voice, he would have almost deceived himself. The atmosphere was a little strange. Wen Yuyuan and Wen Bai looked at each other and were a little puzzled. The clan elder should know Mr. Nongzhu. Why did he ask this question? Did the clan elder not know Mr. Nongzhu? Clan elder. Wen Bai said to Wen Rui anxiously, this is Mr. Nongzhu. He pointed at Yu Qianzhou as he said this. Nonsense. How can I not know Mr. Nongzhu? If he is Mr. Nongzhu, then who is this Mr. Nongzhu? Wen Rui pointed at Yu Qianzhou and then at Nongzhu. Even he felt a little tongue-tied when he said this. Then he pointed at Yu Qianzhou and shouted, "How dare you? Who are you? How dare you pretend to be Mr. Nongzhu and deceive the Wen family?" He was about to lose his temper but found that he could not see through the person's cultivation. "Ah! He is Mr. Nongzhu," Wen Yuyuan and Wen Bai said in unison. The two of them quickly looked at the person in front of them. This person was more handsome than Nongzhu, and he seemed to be more mature. Especially the purple-black bamboo flute on his waist, everything about him matched that of the legendary figure. The two were a little confused. Zhang Peng was also surprised and confused. He did not know what his master was up to. Nongzhu raised half of his eyebrows and walked over. He circled around Yu Qianzhou twice and looked up and down as he walked. Finally, his eyes fell on Yu Qianzhou's face. He clicked his tongue and said, "You really don't want to be lonely. I haven't seen you for a long time and you are playing with disguises again. The craftsmanship is good and very realistic. Is it a human skin mask?" As he said this, he reached out to pinch his face. Yu Qianzhou took out his big fan and opened it, blocking the hand that was reaching out. He frowned and reprimanded, "Do you have any manners? How can you touch someone's face when you meet them?" Chapter 477. You don't even have the face to see others. Why do you care if they touch your face? Nongzhu chuckled. You are the one who doesn't have the face to see others. Yu Qianzhou glared at her and waved his fan. Come with me to the Moon Clan if you can. Let's see who is the one who doesn't have the face to see others. Nongzhu's smile froze on her face. She subconsciously looked back at the stunned crowd and lost the mood to bicker with him. She quickly changed the topic and said, "You could impersonate anyone, but why did you impersonate me? It's fine if you pretend to be me, but shouldn't you at least make it look real? This kind of virtue is simply ruining my reputation." She looked up and down at Yu Qianzhou with disdain. He was wearing a brocade robe and holding a huge golden folding fan. The most disgusting thing was that the golden fan was covered with a bunch of rich peonies. He looked exactly like a nouveau riche. What a joke. Pretend to be you? Who said I am pretending to be you? Yu Qianzhou refused to admit it. Nongzhu made him feel that she was his nemesis. When he was unhappy, he might call Nongzhu senior in front of his master. Now, he just called her, you. Ha! Is there a second Nongzhu in the cultivation world? Nongzhu snorted and said, Everyone in the house calls you Mr. Nongzhu. Am I talking nonsense? Yu Qianzhou's expression didn't change as he said, That's what they called me. You can ask them. I never said that I was Mr. Nongzhu. They just misunderstood. What he said was equivalent to admitting that he was not Mr. Nongzhu. The expressions on Wen Youyuan's and Wen Bai's faces collapsed in an instant. Their last glimmer of hope was shattered. Come to think of it, Nongzhu had been hinting that he was Mr. Nongzhu. He had never said that he was Mr. Nongzhu. Now they suddenly realized that the person who had been worshipping for so long was an impostor. The two of them were a little stunned. Although they didn't dare to say anything in front of the elders, they were very angry. Wen Rui, who had a gloomy expression at first, calmed down after knowing that this person was a fake. There was no doubt that this person knew Nongzhu, and his background was not ordinary at all. Instead, he was arguing with Nongzhu. Now, there was no need to pursue the matter. Wen Rui secretly wondered who was under this mask. Had he seen this person before? Nongzhu was startled. She glanced at Wen Yuyuan and Wen Bai's expressions and understood that Yu Qianzhou must have misled them. Otherwise, how could there be such a big misunderstanding? This guy was not a good person. He couldn't help but sneer, Sure enough, you're wearing a mask and your skin is even thicker. You and I both know exactly what is going on. Sir, who is this? Wen Rui walked to Nongzhu and asked. Nongzhu paused and thought to herself that she really couldn't tell him about Yu Qianzhou's identity. If the Wen family knew that Yu Qianzhou was Bai Chongqun's disciple, she really didn't know what would happen. So she smiled faintly and said, "Nothing. He is the disciple of an old friend. This guy is always frivolous and likes to fool around." Wen Rui said, "Oh." Seeing that Nongzhu was unwilling to explain, he didn't probe further. At this moment, Hibiscus and Hipster ran in from outside the courtyard excitedly. They were stunned to see so many people here. Yu Qianzhou waved to Hibiscus. Hibiscus immediately ran to his side and looked curiously at the two strangers in front of her. Hipster also slowly came to Hibiscus's side and heard Wen Yuyuan say in a low voice, "Qing, come back." Hipster immediately realized that the atmosphere was a little strange and walked back to Wen Yuyuan's side in confusion. Nongzhu saw that Hibiscus and Yu Qianzhou were very close and asked in surprise, "Who is she?" "My woman," Yu Qianzhou said without hesitation. Hearing this, Nongzhu frowned slightly and no one knew what she was thinking. After thinking for a while, she turned and said, "Wen Rui, there is nothing here. You can leave first. I have some private matters to discuss with him." "Sir, please go ahead." Wen Rui nodded and turned to walk as he said to the others, "Follow me, I have something to ask you." Wen Yuyuan and the other two followed him silently. There was indeed no place for them to talk. After they left, Nongzhu smiled again and said happily, "Yu Qianzhou, you are quite bold. I have already said that they have misunderstood. If you want to hold a grudge, I can't do anything about it." Yu Qianzhou said indifferently. "Let's forget about this matter. I'm not talking about that." Nongzhu waved her hand and said, "I said you are bold because you even dared to kidnap Yin Baikong's grandson. I'm afraid you still don't know what kind of person Yin Baikong is." "Yin Baikong? Who is Yin Baikong?" Yu Qianzhou's words were calm but he was shocked. "I did this without anyone knowing. How did this guy know? Could it be that he was here because of this?" At first, Yu Qianzhou thought that Nongzhu's arrival was purely a coincidence. However, Nongzhu actually said that he was the one who kidnapped Yin Baikong. This was a serious problem. From what he had seen in the Jade archives these past few days, Yin Baikong was indeed not a person to be trifled with. No matter how he thought about it, he felt that there were no loopholes in his plan. Yu Qianzhou deeply suspected that this guy was very cunning. Maybe he was trying to trick him. "Just keep pretending." Nongzhu snorted and said, "I'm just reminding you that this matter has already spread to the entire cultivation world. Many demigod stage experts have already gathered in Dian Kingdom. I also rushed over from Obedient Island when I heard this news. I advise you to stop if you can. Under the attention of so many experts, you still want to earn that 200 million high-grade spirit stones? That's a fool's dream." Yu Qianzhou was shocked. This matter had already spread to the entire cultivation world. Analyzing Yin Baikong's character, he wasn't that generous to the point of announcing his family's dirty linen. Could it be that someone intentionally leaked this matter to see Yin Baikong make a fool of himself? "How dare you ruin my plans? I'll deal with you when I'm free." He immediately set his sights on the Lord of Dian Kingdom, Hua Zongming. Thousands of thoughts ran through his mind, but his expression was somewhat confused as he asked, "Why don't I understand what you're saying? Who is Yin Baikong? Why would I kidnap his grandson? You can't just spout nonsense without any evidence." "Ha! Are you not going to admit it?" Nongzhu revealed an expression that said he overestimated himself and said, "Tomorrow is the day to pay the ransom. The location is already known by everyone. Facing hundreds of demigod stage experts, even if you get the spirit stones, do you think you can still escape? I guarantee that you won't be able to hide. I appreciate your kindness, but this matter really wasn't done by me. Yu Qianqiu waved his fan and sighed, although I, Yu Qianqiu, am not a gentleman, those who have met me know that I never lie. Everyone is full of praise for my character. I have the courage to admit whatever I do, so there's really no need for me to lie to you. If it was really done by me, I would definitely do it openly. Nonsense. Nongzhu waved her hand and interrupted him. She instantly rolled her eyes at him and sneered, "Don't boast about your character. I've heard from Ze that you are a big liar. No matter where he goes, he doesn't care whether others approve of him or not. He first praises his own character to the point of blooming flowers, but behind the scenes, he always does such sneaky things." Hearing this, Furong glared at Nongzhu angrily. How dare she talk about her man like this? Zhangpeng, who was at the side, lowered his head and pretended not to hear anything. His master's ability to lie without blinking made him feel inferior. He hesitated, not knowing if he should learn this skill or not. Ze. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said, "She follows me, and I provide her with good food and drinks every day. I didn't expect that she would dare to slander me behind my back. Well, when we meet, I'll teach you a lesson." Nongzhu's face instantly darkened. She sneered and said, "How do you want to teach her a lesson? Come on, tell me." A faint murderous aura spread out, and a flock of birds on the trees in the courtyard suddenly flew away in fright. In the blink of an eye, the whole courtyard became terrifyingly quiet, shrouded by an aura that made people's hearts palpitate. With just one sentence, Yu Qianqiu poked Nongzhu's reverse scale. Furong and Zhangpeng were shocked. They had never encountered such a majestic and terrifying aura. Only now did they realize how terrifying the person in front of them was. Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He immediately thought of the scene when Nongzhu risked her life to save Ze in Shantian Island. He secretly cursed his bad luck. Why bother with this pair of father and daughter? He just needed to make his own fortune. With a plan in mind, he snorted and said, "Of course I'll teach her a lesson. It's impossible for me to teach her animal play. Want to learn? You can either figure it out yourself, or let her find my master herself." He seemed to be unwilling to admit defeat, but only he knew that he had already admitted defeat. Furong and Zhangpeng were attracted by the master he mentioned. Nongzhu's face instantly brightened up, and her mouth turned into a semicircle. The threatening murderous aura in the courtyard just now disappeared in a blink of an eye. He nodded and said, "This is the matter of you juniors. I won't interfere." His expression became much more relaxed. He was a veteran in the field of love. He already felt that Ze had developed a kind of dependence on Yu Qianqiu. If this dependence was allowed to develop, it would be out of control. The only way was to nip it in the bud. In fact, he also understood that it was impossible to keep his daughter by his side forever. The key was that as a father, he only wanted to find a reliable person for his daughter. This request was not too much. Nongzhu also seriously considered and observed Yu Qianqiu, but she found that this guy was too adventurous. The wild nature in his bones made people feel that he could destroy the world. He did all kinds of unimaginable things, but there was nothing he did not dare to do. He was simply making enemies everywhere. It was fine if Bai Changchun was here, but what if he was gone in the future? Who could protect him? Who could be lucky all his life? Therefore, Nongzhu felt that it was a very dangerous thing to entrust his daughter to Yu Qianqiu. Maybe she would become a widow one day. He did not expect his daughter's future husband to be very powerful in the cultivation world, but he hoped that he could accompany his daughter to live a peaceful and happy life. He thought that this request was not too much. Now hearing Yu Qianqiu's words, he was greatly relieved. It didn't matter whether he taught his daughter animal play or not. It didn't matter even if she didn't learn it for the rest of her life. As long as you stay away from my daughter. Chapter 478. Yu Qianqiu was just giving himself a way out. He didn't know what Nongzhu was thinking. I will stay here for a few more days. You have a good relationship with the Wen family. Please help me inform them so that they won't think that I lied to them. Yu Qianzhou didn't bother to be polite to Nongzhu and gave her an order. In fact, Nongzhu was a very easygoing person and didn't care much. But she said strangely, you lied to them and you still have the face to continue living here? Then she suddenly realized, I see. You haven't gotten the ransom yet. Are you going to leave after getting the spirit stones? No matter what you say, I solemnly declare that I, Yu Qianzhou, am not as bad as you think. Yu Qianzhou pointed at Zhang Peng and said, he has taken a fancy to the princess of the Dayong nation. He borrowed the identity of the Baiwan nation to participate in this competition to find a son-in-law. For some reason, he rejected the competition. When the competition is over, we will leave. It's not what you think. Zhang Peng, who was silent, almost bit his tongue. Master, it was you who arranged for me to go. How did it turn into me liking the princess of Dayong Kingdom? Nongzhu glanced at Zhang Peng and said, what's so good about being the prince's son-in-law? Hey! It's a waste if you don't cultivate it. Nongzhu walked around Zhang Peng and looked at him carefully. But he was just looking and had no interest in taking in disciples. Even Nongzhu couldn't see through Zhang Peng's cultivation. This made Yu Qianzhou more confident about the efficacy of the restraining breath pill. Yu Qianzhou said expressionlessly, to each his own. What he meant was, what do you care? Oh. Since we met, I'll go and join in the fun. Nongzhu said indifferently. In fact, she suspected that Yu Qianzhou was up to something and wanted to go and see. Up to you. Yu Qianzhou said as he laid down on the swing and pretended to sleep. Nongzhu smirked and turned to leave. Before he left, he gave Hibiscus a few more glances and discovered that she was also a mortal. He was truly speechless. It seemed like this fellow had mortal fetishes and liked to mingle with mortals. But it was none of his business. After Nongzhu found Wen Rui and the others and learned that there was indeed a competition to select the emperor's son-in-law, she decided to stay for a few days. Instead, he made up his mind to stay in the same courtyard as Yu Qianzhou. He had to observe him carefully to see what he was up to. In this embassy, Wen Chongzheng was probably the most depressed one. He didn't expect to meet a liar, and the liar actually made an emperor wish to him. In addition to being depressed, his thoughts fell on the serious Nongzhu, hoping to find a chance to get close to her. Hipster, on the other hand, was a bit better. She was just a bit disappointed. Although she had been bullied by Yu Qianzhou for nothing, and he had even promised her the dream of eternal youth, she had indeed fallen for Furong. She had a high status since she was a child and didn't have any real friends. It could be said that she was afraid of loneliness. However, Hibiscus made her see the hope of being friends. When Nongzhu returned to the small courtyard, she saw Yu Qianzhou lying on the swing leisurely. She immediately walked over and said angrily, don't you know how to respect your elders? Move aside. Disrespectful old man. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and jumped off the swing. He said to Zhang Peng, you don't need to guard here anymore. Go back to the house and rest. After saying that, he directly pulled Hibiscus back to the house. Nongzhu lay on the swing proudly and found that it was indeed more comfortable. He immediately made a decision in his heart. After returning to the South Sea purple bamboo forest, he would also get this thing. Although he seemed to be lying on the swing with his eyes closed, in fact, his divine sense had already enveloped the entire small courtyard. Tomorrow was the day to pay the ransom. Now, even if a master at the last stage of soul transformation broke in, he would not be able to escape from his divine sense. He wanted to see how this fellow could sneak out. Was it really as he said, that the kidnapping of Yin Baikong's grandson had nothing to do with him? However, he kept watch until the sky turned dark, and the three of them did not come out. Nongzhu was slightly alert, and his divine sense quickly invaded the room to check. However, What he saw made Nongzhu's face turn red. This damned fellow was actually making love with that woman. He quickly withdrew his divine sense and looked into Zhang Peng's room. When he found that Zhang Peng was also there, he felt at ease and closed his eyes, quietly controlling the entire courtyard. The next day, in the sky above Deyang City, a series of rapid flying sounds could be heard. All the targets were gathered at a certain place outside the city. The entire city's residents did not know what was going on. Only the cultivators knew that these were people with extremely high cultivation levels flying across the sky. Nongzhu squinted and looked at the sky. He really wanted to fly into the sky to watch the show, but he gritted his teeth and decided to watch Yu Qianzhou to death. He did not believe that this matter had nothing to do with Yu Qianzhou. His divine sense quickly swept across Yu Qianzhou's room. A man and a woman were still sleeping soundly on the bed. It seemed that they had overindulged in debauchery. As time passed, Nongzhu was as anxious as ants scratching his heart. Such a big show was not far from the city, but he could not see it. Of course, it was not far for him, but for ordinary people, it would take them half a day to get there. At this time, when Rui entered the courtyard and came to the swing, he bowed slightly and said, "Sir, it's almost time. Why don't we go together?" "No, I want to keep an eye on this guy," Nongzhu deliberately shouted. He wanted to tell Yu Qianzhou clearly that as long as he was here today, Yu Qianzhou had to tell the truth, and there was no way he could sneak away. When Rui was a little confused. Since he came all the way here, didn't he want to see how this matter would end? Why didn't he go? Nongzhu's seniority was higher than him, so when Rui could not say anything more, he immediately cupped his hands and said, "Then when Rui will go and have a look first. If there is any result, I will tell you when I come back." As soon as he finished his words, there was another whistling sound in the sky. He looked up and immediately flew away. As soon as when Rui left, Nongzhu quickly checked the room again. The woman had already gotten up and was dressing up at the dressing table, while Yu Qianzhou was still sleeping soundly on the bed. Nongzhu immediately transmitted a message to him, "Boy, you have slept for almost a whole day. Don't you want to go out and exercise?" Who knew that Yu Qianzhou's eyes would open wide and he would raise his head and shout, "Why are you so noisy? You peeping Tom, have you never seen a man sleeping with a woman?" His voice was so loud that everyone in the embassy could probably hear him. "Good, you dare to be rude to me. Let me tell you, as long as I am here today, don't even think about leaving this courtyard." Nongzhu sneered and transmitted a message to him. Her divine sense controlled the whole courtyard tightly. Dozens of miles west of Deyang City, there was a desolate valley deep in the mountains. It was originally a desolate place, but today, there were probably thousands of people gathered around the valley. At first, there were some people hiding, afraid that they would ruin Yin Baikong's plan. Later on, more and more people gathered. In the end, everyone stood out openly. Mountain peaks, treetops, cliffs, and other places were filled with people. It was simply overcrowded. The law does not punish the masses. Everyone believed that no matter how arrogant Yin Baikong was, he would not make everyone his enemy, right? Hundreds of soul-severing stage cultivators hovering in the air looked at each other speechlessly after seeing the situation below. With so many people guarding here, would the kidnappers still dare to come for the ransom? Moreover, looking at the situation around them, it seemed that there were still people rushing over. The instigators, Hua Zongming and the other 5 exchanged glances. It seemed that the news had spread far and wide. They did not expect that besides the soul-severing stage cultivators, there were still so many people who dared to come and watch Yin Baikong. Not long after, a sharp whistling sound pierced through the air. Before anyone could react, the black-robed, white-haired Yin Baikong had already appeared in front of everyone. Such a fast speed had indeed shocked everyone. They all secretly thought that a soul-severing late-stage expert was indeed extraordinary. He was indeed not someone that ordinary experts could compare to. Baikong's cold eyes swept across the surroundings. His expression was truly not good, especially when he saw the group of people below. His face twitched uncontrollably. They simply did not know the meaning of death. Their cultivation was not that great, yet they dared to come and join in the fun. Baikong immediately laughed evilly and said, "Everyone really gave me face. I will remember this face." His gaze was like a sharp blade, causing the people below to lower their heads. None of the people below dared to look directly at him. From the meaning behind his words, it was clear that he wanted to remember the faces of those who came to join in the fun and find an opportunity to take revenge. However, no matter how high Baikong's cultivation was, it was impossible for him to remember the faces of so many people below. It was even more impossible for him to take revenge on them one by one. After all, not everyone was a rogue cultivator. Most of them had the backing of the cultivation world of various countries. They were not people that he could casually take revenge on just because he wanted to. His words were indeed a bit more threatening. Seeing the group of people below lower their heads because of his words, Baikong finally felt a bit more comfortable in his heart. He found a bit of a sense of superiority. He looked around and waited for the kidnappers to appear. However, he was immediately stunned. He also had the same doubts as everyone else. With so many people gathered here, would the kidnappers really appear? Wouldn't they be a bit too daring? Baikong even suspected that his grandson was already dead. It was purely the kidnappers who wanted to embarrass him and deliberately make fun of him. Just as his expression was uncertain, a loud rumble suddenly came from the valley. Everyone was slightly startled and quickly looked over. At the foot of the valley, on the side of the mountain wall that was originally intact, a 2-meter square stone slab suddenly fell down. A cave suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. "Hey! Look, there seems to be some words on that stone slab." A soul formation stage cultivator in the sky suddenly pointed at the stone slab and said. Everyone looked at it with rapt attention. Sure enough, there seemed to be words on the stone slab. However, everyone was standing too high and the words were too small, so they couldn't see clearly. Baikong, who was in the sky, instantly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he was already standing in front of the cave in front of the mountain wall. Without hesitation, he quickly released his divine sense into the cave. This cave was obviously newly dug. It wasn't deep, only about 20 meters. However, there was a turn in the middle, so people couldn't see the bottom at a glance. But for a soul formation stage cultivator, this wasn't a problem at all. With a casual sweep of his divine sense, he was able to clearly see the situation inside. Baikong frowned. There was nothing in this cave. It was empty. His gaze quickly fell on the stone slab beside him and checked the contents on it. The group of soul formation stage cultivators had already lowered their altitude in the air until they could see clearly. Many of them softly said, Baikong, if you don't want to deliberately kill your grandson, don't rush into the cave. Obediently stand outside the cave and throw the spirit stones I want into the innermost part. With your cultivation, it shouldn't be a difficult task. As long as the number isn't wrong, you can immediately see your lively and unharmed grandson. The surrounding cultivators didn't dare to approach. They also didn't know what was written on it. The group of soul formation stage cultivators looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Not only was this kidnapper bold, but he was also very experienced and professional. It didn't seem like this was his first time doing something like this. They then looked at Baikong and shook their heads speechlessly. This guy was famous in the cultivation world for scheming against people. They didn't think that he would have such a day. Baikong looked at the words on the stone slab. Not only was he not angry, his brows furrowed into a deep groove. He thought to himself, the cave was completely empty. There wasn't a single person inside. Even if he threw the spirit stones in, no one would take them. Could it be that he was playing with me? No, Baikong's divine sense quickly swept through the stone slab. This stone slab was at least a few hundred kilograms. It definitely wouldn't have fallen down for no reason. He didn't sense any strong airflow just now. It was obvious that someone had pushed it down from the inside. There was someone inside just now. Baikong's eyes slightly narrowed. His divine sense quickly searched the inside of the cave. However, after searching every corner of the cave, he discovered that there was no possibility of anyone hiding inside. He even used his incomparably tyrannical divine sense to knock on every side of the cave wall. However, he still couldn't find any hidden holes. The group of soul formation stage cultivators above did not know the situation inside the cave. Thus, they couldn't understand what he was hesitating about. What the hell? Baikong's eyes narrowed into slits. He thought to himself, I want to see what kind of divine being would be able to take something from under my nose. He reached out and took out 2 storage pouches. With a light toss, the 2 pouches seemed to be carried by a pair of invisible hands. They slowly flew into the cave. Then, they made a turn and fell to the ground after reaching the bottom of the cave. Originally, 1 storage pouch could have contained everything. However, he purposely split them into 2. His goal was to create a slight difference in quantity. Don't look down on this slight difference. For people at their level of cultivation, a slight difference at a crucial moment could be a fatal difference. He believed that the person who dared to take advantage of him would definitely not have a cultivation lower than his. Thus, he made some preparations for the details. Huh? Baikong suddenly let out a muffled groan in disbelief. His eyes widened. His divine sense had followed the storage pouches into the cave. He had always been vigilant of his surroundings. However, the moment the storage pouches fell to the ground, he suddenly felt another person's divine sense fluctuation. Before he could figure out where it came from, the 2 storage pouches on the ground mysteriously disappeared. What's wrong with Baikong? What did he see? Why is he so shocked? The group of soul formation stage cultivators above whispered to each other. If it wasn't for the fact that they were afraid of being blamed by Baikong, they would have already gone down to investigate. They didn't see the situation inside, so how could they understand how shocked Baikong was right now? To be exact, Baikong was so shocked that he couldn't speak. His face was filled with horror. To be able to take away 2 storage pouches right in front of his eyes was simply unimaginable. He had seen Bai Chongqun's cultivation before. However, even if Bai Chongqun personally came, with others blocking the cave entrance, it was impossible for Bai Chongqun to take away the things in front of him without anyone noticing. Heavens! Could it be that there's someone in this world whose cultivation is higher than Bai Chongqun's? Or is it an immortal descending from the heavens to target me? Baikong swallowed his saliva with difficulty. At this moment, in the cave where Wufeng and his family were imprisoned in Utopia. Yu Qianzhou, who was dressed in black and had his face masked, quickly injected his divine sense into the 2 storage pouches. After a while, he nodded with satisfaction and laughed at the wounded Wufeng. Your grandfather, Baikong, is indeed a man of his word. 200 million upper-grade spiritual stones are not a small amount. You're rich. As expected of the owner of the World Trading Company, haha. He put them away. Wufeng looked at the whip marks on his youngest son's body and said angrily, Who are you? Since you know that my grandfather is the owner of the World Trading Company, how dare you torture my family? Aren't you afraid that my grandfather will settle the score with you? Baikong is nothing to me. Yu Qianzhou sneered. Seeing that Wufeng was about to bite, he waved his hand and said, This guy is itching for a beating. I'll give him a good memory before I leave. Beat him. Wham! A masked man in black waved the rattan in his hand, causing Wufeng to wail and roll on the ground. Her family of women and children were so frightened that they burst into tears. How dare you talk back to me? You don't even have the awareness of being a prisoner. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand again and said, forget it. A few lashes will do. It'll be bad if he dies. Yin Baikong will scold me for not keeping my word. Damn it, I'm the most trustworthy person. Yin Wufeng was unrepentant. He glared at Yu Qianzhou fiercely. Yu Qianzhou chuckled and said, don't look at me. Your grandfather has paid the ransom and will send you back soon. You should take care of your wife and children. If your grandfather refuses to pay the ransom, your family will have to part forever. What do you mean? Yin Wufeng's eyes widened as he roared. Nothing, Yu Qianzhou chuckled and said, your grandfather has paid the ransom, so of course I have to send you back. But I'm only paying the ransom for you. Do you understand what I mean? Despicable. Shameless. Yin Wufeng roared, you said you'll let my family go once you get the ransom. You're not keeping your word. Yu Qianzhou's gaze turned cold as he waved his hand lightly. Wham! The masked man beside him immediately lashed out with a whip, causing Yin Wufeng, who had just struggled to get up, to scream and roll on the ground. I've always been a man of my word. I'm a man of my word and I'm a man of my word. Yu Qianzhou sneered and said, raise your arrogant head and think about it. I've always said that I'll let you go once I get the ransom. When did I say that I'll let your family go? I hate it when people slander me. Yin Wufeng trembled with anger. He carefully thought about what the other party had said and it was true. The other party did not say that he would let his family go once he got the ransom. He only promised to let him go. However, the other party's confusing words were clearly hinting to him that Yu represented his family. Now that the other party had gone back on his word and his family was in the other party's hands, what else could he do? What do you want so that you'll let my family go? Yin Wufeng roared. Well, I'll help you think about it. Yu Qianzhou turned around with his hands behind his back before he suddenly nodded and said, what do you think about this? I'll send you back first and you can ask your grandfather for another 100 million upper-grade spiritual stones as ransom. Once I get the money, I'll immediately let your family go. Yin Wufeng was completely speechless as he stared at Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, don't look at me with such resentment. This price is already very fair. Think about it, you're worth 200 million upper-grade spiritual stones. Don't tell me that all your wives and children aren't even worth 100 million to you. Will you go back on your word when the time comes? Yin Wufeng gritted his teeth and spat out word by word. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said, no, no. Listen carefully this time. As long as I get another 100 million superior grade spirit stones as ransom, I guarantee that I will return your entire family to you safe and sound, allowing you to reunite with your family. Alright, I promise you, Yin Wufeng gritted his teeth and said, but I also have a favor to ask of you. I hope you can promise me. Yu Qianzhou was slightly stunned and said, tell me first and see if I can do it. I won't go back on my word. Perhaps I won't be able to get 100 million upper-grade spiritual stones in a short period of time, but I'll get it sooner or later. Yin Wufeng turned to look at his wife and children behind him and said, I beg you to give me some time. Yu Qianzhou looked at him with a burning gaze and sighed in his heart. At least he's a man with a conscience. He's not as bad as Yin Baikong was described in the Jade Archive. But I'm not bad either. I've only given you some physical pain and a little shock. I didn't do anything to you, and I haven't taken any of your lives yet. He remembered that in order to use the captured cultivators to scare this family, he had already killed them. Yu Qianzhou coughed and walked over to Yin Wufeng. He squatted down and patted Yin Wufeng's shoulder and said, don't blame me. Your grandfather, Yin Baikong, did something even worse than me. I'm only doing this to seek justice for those who died. I'll agree to your request, but I'll only give you 10 days. I won't wait after that. Yin Wufeng nodded silently. Yu Qianqiu smiled and told him a few things to note when handing over the ransom. Then, he placed a finger on Yin Wufeng's neck and knocked him out. Then, he grabbed him and carried him out of the cave. The women and children in the cave immediately cried non-stop, as if they were going to be separated by life and death. Little did they know that Yu Qianqiu had already made up his mind. Even if he couldn't get a single spiritual stone, he would still release them when the time came. On the other side, Yin Baikong saw that the 2 storage pouches had disappeared for a long time, but the other party still hadn't handed over the hostages. He subconsciously thought that he had been fooled. He was trembling with anger, but there was nothing he could do. It was his fault for not even noticing the other party's men. It was simply embarrassing if word got out. Chapter 479. His hands that were crossed over his abdomen slowly opened up, and his 10 fingers slowly opened up into claws. A faintly discernible qi began to circulate between his fingers, gathering into a faint light. Yin Baikong's black robe fluttered without any wind. He was like a motionless mountain, but it gave people the feeling that something terrifying was brewing in his body that was about to explode. Not good. Yin Baikong seems to be making a move. The soul-forming stage cultivator at the top had just spoken, but the others had already soared into the sky. They had obviously noticed it as well. What a joke, with Yin Baikong's cultivation, once he made a move, wouldn't it be a waste if they stood too close to be affected? The surrounding cultivators also noticed that something was wrong. Seeing the group of soul-forming stage cultivators in the sky fleeing, how could they not know the terror of Yin Baikong's eruption? In an instant, figures flew everywhere, each faster than the last. Yin Baikong, who was extremely furious, wanted to make a move. He wanted to destroy the cave in one fell swoop to vent the anger in his heart. However, just as the boundless true essence in his body was about to circulate, a weak moan suddenly came from the cave before it could be released. Yin Baikong was slightly startled. His divine sense was like lightning, filling the entire cave in an instant. Yin Wufeng, who was riddled with injuries, had appeared out of nowhere. He was looking around blankly as he climbed up, holding onto the cave wall as he walked step by step towards the light outside. The powerful aura that he had accumulated disappeared in a blink of an eye. Yin Baikong's forehead was covered in a thin layer of sweat. His opponent's cultivation was too high, not just a little higher than his. He was practically treating him like a blade of grass, toying with him however he wanted. It was truly frightening. Yin Baikong had never been so afraid before. Even when he was facing the world's #1 expert, Bai Changchun, he had never felt so uneasy. The anger that had just been ignited was instantly extinguished. His opponent had completely ignored his existence. Yin Baikong did not dare to act rashly, because the consequences of destroying the cave would be unpredictable. The group of soul-forming stage cultivators in the sky could not help but exclaim in surprise. They had just noticed that Yin Baikong's aura was getting stronger, and it looked like he was on the verge of exploding. Why did he suddenly retract his aura? A person walked out of the cave in a swaying manner, immediately attracting everyone's attention. After not seeing strong light for a few days, Yin Wufeng subconsciously covered his eyes when he approached the cave entrance. After a while, he let go and saw the black-robed Yin Baikong standing outside the cave. He immediately ran over. "Grandfather!" With a sorrowful cry, Yin Wufeng knelt on the ground and kowtowed while crying. "Wufeng is unfilial to have alarmed grandfather's presence. It's good that you're back. It was grandfather who implicated you." Yin Baikong's face revealed a rare trace of benevolence, but when he saw his grandson's ragged clothes and the lacerated flesh, he couldn't suppress his anger, causing his brows to tremble incessantly. He then shouted angrily towards the cave, "Who exactly are you? With your cultivation, why are you torturing a mortal?" The sound was like an invisible sharp blade, scraping the layers of rocks that had been peeled off the walls of the cave, causing them to fall to the ground. The spirit-severing cultivators in the air were all bewildered. They didn't know just how high the cultivation of the person inside the cave was to be able to cause Yin Baikong to be so fearful. Even though he was so angry, he was still able to restrain himself and not make a move. Seeing that no one in the cave replied, Yin Baikong looked around. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he knew that if he didn't act tough today, he would become a laughing stock for bullying the weak and fearing the strong. One must know that it was not shameful to submit to the world's #1 expert, by Changchun, because no one dared to defy him. However, if he were to submit to this nameless person, then his, Yin Baikong's, reputation would be ruined today. With this thought in mind, he couldn't care less about the other party's unfathomable cultivation. He shouted again, "Since you've come to me, then I, Yin Baikong, will not shirk my responsibility. Do you dare to come out and fight me?" The people in the air and the surroundings immediately whispered to each other. Yin Baikong had taken the initiative to issue a challenge. The show that everyone had been looking forward to was finally about to happen. It had been a long time since they saw a spirit-severing expert make a move. However, after waiting for a long time, the thing that everyone was looking forward to did not happen. The mysterious expert still did not show himself. Instead, they heard Yin Wufeng's pleading voice, "Grandpa, please calm down. Your granddaughter-in-law and great-grandsons are in his hands. Please save them, Grandpa. I'll send you to the side first. It's dangerous here. It's not a place for you to stay." Yin Baikong did not care about what he said. He looked around vigilantly and raised his hand to send him away. Unexpectedly, Yin Wufeng knelt down and hugged his leg, begging again, "Grandpa, please save them. Please save them. If you don't agree, they're dead. Bastard. We don't even know where they are. How am I supposed to save them?" Yin Baikong reprimanded. Spirit stones are enough. He said that if I pay another 100 million high-grade spirit stones as ransom, he'll release my family. Yin Wufeng hugged his leg and refused to let go. "You actually believe this kind of nonsense?" Yin Baikong had the urge to slap him to death. It would have been fine if he did not say it, but now that he mentioned it, he only remembered that he paid 200 million high-grade spirit stones for the release of one person. Now, he wanted another 100 million. This was simply intolerable. This was too much. The group of soul formation realm cultivators in the air were paying attention to every movement below. The conversation between the grandfather and grandson left them speechless. This kidnapper was too greedy. He was not satisfied with just 200 million and released the people in batches. He even wanted to get 100 million. Did he think spirit stones were rocks that could be picked up as he pleased? "Grandpa, I beg you, try again. He promised me that he'll release everyone after he gets the spirit stones." Yin Wufeng begged. "Let go." Yin Baikong said in a low voice, "If you don't let go, I'll kill you too. No, that person is ruthless. If we don't get the spirit stones, they'll die." Yin Wufeng cried bitterly, "Grandpa, for the sake of my dead grandma, for the sake of grandma, try again. Just one more time." Yin Baikong's expression froze. The image of that gentle woman appeared in his mind. He had countless women in his life. Due to his high cultivation, he had lived for too long. In the end, he could only watch as those women aged. After the women's beauty faded, they naturally could not attract his interest. Each and every one of them was fed well and lived well, waiting to die. He could not even remember how many he had. Only that woman, who was also his last woman, had died an unnatural death. Instead, her most beautiful face had been forever engraved in his heart. After that, Yin Baikong knew that he had a limited lifespan. Even if he gave birth to a child with cultivation talent, he would not have the time to nurture them. Thus, he gave up on the thought of sowing more children. Therefore, among all the women, the last one was the woman he thought he loved the most. This woman gave birth to a son for him. When the son was in his prime, he followed in his mother's footsteps and died a violent death. The son left behind another son, which was the grandson kneeling in front of him. Yin Wufeng could be said to be the only flesh and blood of the woman he loved the most in his memory. Yin Wufeng's flesh and blood were naturally that woman's bloodline. Humans lived for too long. When the woman that left the deepest impression in his memory was suddenly brought up, Yin Baikong suddenly felt like he could not bear the burden. His breathing became hurried. According to the soul formation expert's estimation of Yin Baikong's character, him being able to fork out 200 million to save his grandson was already a great kindness. How could he allow someone to extort him again and again? However, the result was surprising. Yin Baikong silently took out a storage bag and threw it by his feet. Yin Wufeng picked up the storage bag and kowtowed. He then turned around and crawled into the cave. After entering, he realized that the cave was a dead end. He anxiously searched around at the end. When he recalled the masked man's words, he hurriedly placed the storage bag on the ground and looked around, hoping that the masked man would fulfill his promise. Yin Baikong's divine sense had been following his grandson all the way to the innermost part of the cave. This time, he used his divine sense to seal the entire cave tightly. He had to find out where the other party's divine sense came from. Who knows, he might be able to find out where the other party was hiding. However, something unexpected happened. That strand of divine sense suddenly appeared. Yin Baikong's divine sense quickly trapped the other party's divine sense. However, not only did the divine sense come without a trace, it also disappeared without a trace. Just like that, the storage bag on the ground disappeared into thin air. How was this possible? Yin Baikong was dumbfounded. Even if someone with a cultivation as high as Bai Chongqun used teleportation, with his divine sense sealed, he would still be able to find out where they were going. What kind of cultivation was this? Just with his divine sense, he had already surpassed the realm of teleportation? Yin Baikong immediately felt his back break out in cold sweat. If he was not clear, he could still make wild guesses. If he was too clear, he would be scared out of his wits. One had to know that even teleportation could only be done if there was a path. Now that the other party's divine sense had already surpassed his previous knowledge, if the person was here personally, it would be hard to imagine how high his cultivation would be. Yin Baikong's back was drenched in cold sweat. He had never heard of such a divine ability. Bang! Suddenly, there was an explosion from a faraway mountain. Yin Baikong was startled awake and looked up. A ray of light rose into the sky and exploded into specks of light. Hua Zongming, who was in the soul formation stage group, frowned and said, "That's strange. Why would someone release fireworks in this barren mountain? Everything that happened today is strange. Let's go take a look." The 5 people beside him quickly followed him. The 6 of them landed on a mountain top and saw 8 to 9 unconscious women and children lying on the bare mountain top. Every one of them had whip marks on their bodies. There was a rock beside them with words written on it, "Yin Baikong, I am a man of my word. Take the money and release the people. Everything is settled. We will meet again if fate allows it." On top of the rock, there was a small black triangular flag fluttering in the wind. The golden word, "hero," was exceptionally eye-catching. This action was very arrogant, as if it was mocking everyone. "We'll meet again if fate allows it?" Yin Baikong was probably going to vomit blood. Hua Zongming and the others looked at each other. "Yin Baikong, bring your grandson here. There are 9 unconscious women and children here. Let him see if they are his family members." Hua Zongming transmitted his voice to the direction of the valley far away. A moment later, the sound of breaking through the air could be heard. Yin Baikong was holding a transparent ball of light in one hand. It was Yin Wufeng inside. When the 2 of them landed, Hua Zongming asked, "Yin Wufeng, take a look and see if these are your family members?" "Yes, yes, yes." Yin Wufeng knelt down and picked up a 7 to 8-year-old child. He asked anxiously, "What happened to them? What's wrong? Grandpa, please save them." Yin Baikong didn't care about him at all. His gaze shifted from the few lines of words on the rock to the arrogant little flag. Shu Xian shook her head and said to Yin Wufeng, "They are fine. They just temporarily fainted." A group of soul formation stage cultivators rushed over. After witnessing the scene, they were all speechless. They were thinking that Yin Baikong had lost a lot of face this time. He threw out 300 million upper-grade spirit stones, but he didn't even get to see the other party's face. They didn't even know who this hero was. It would be better not to provoke him in the future. Swoosh! Yin Baikong waved his palm. A powerful airflow surged and the rock with the words on it turned into dust. The black flag landed in his hand. He stared at the word, "hero," on the flag with an ashen face. He didn't care if Yin Wufeng's family could withstand the aftershock of his palm strike. Fortunately, for the sake of the children, Shu Xian became compassionate. She flashed in front of them in time and pushed out a light wave with her slender palm. Otherwise, Yin Baikong's 300 million upper-grade spirit stones would have been in vain. He would only be redeeming a pile of minced meat. Suddenly, Yin Baikong soared into the sky, shaking the clouds in the sky. His voice spread in all directions, sneaky, hiding, using a few mortals to make a fuss. What kind of ability is that? If you have the guts, come out and fight me. He was currently muddle-headed from anger. He didn't care if the other party was a peerless expert or not. His voice reverberated in the mountains. Birds and beasts fled in fright, but no one came out to answer him. Everyone looked at each other and thought, maybe the kidnapper has already left. Ah! Yin Baikong let out a long angry roar. His figure suddenly rose and fell like a black shadow, shooting between heaven and earth. In an instant, an earth-shattering rumble resounded, causing the earth to tremble. Yin Baikong's figure crashed into 6 towering mountains in a row. The 6 connected mountains were flattened in a split second. The mountain springs were still and the streams were nowhere to be seen. In the blink of an eye, they were covered by the soil that filled the mountain ravines, forming a vast flat land. The surrounding mountains were also affected. The towering trees were like helpless withered grass, uprooted by the strong airflow and flying in all directions. A perfectly good old forest in the mountains was forcefully changed in an instant. The spirit-severing experts also released their protective chi to defend themselves. Hua Zongming naturally wouldn't let anything happen to Yin Wufeng. If this crazy guy turned around and found an excuse to cause trouble, it would be troublesome. He immediately formed a circle with the other 5 to protect the family. Although everyone was shocked by this spirit-severing expert's power, they weren't too surprised. After all, they had seen Bai Changchun in action. The world's #1 expert was someone who could fly to the heavens and use lightning as a sword. He was even more terrifying when he went crazy. Yin Baikong was much weaker than him. Therefore, everyone's mental endurance was no longer the same as before. However, to the dumbfounded Yin Wufeng, he only found out today how powerful a person like his grandfather was. He also understood how much his grandfather had suffered today. This was the action of a person who had nowhere to vent his anger. The suffering that his family had suffered had been thrown to the back of his mind. Chapter 480. Yin Baikong had caused such a huge commotion that the entire Deyang city could clearly feel the tremors. The commoners were in a state of panic, not knowing what had happened. Nongzhu, who was lying on the swing, suddenly appeared a few meters away from the swing. With a solemn expression, she stared at the direction of the source of the tremors and murmured, "Could it be that Yin Baikong and the kidnappers fought?" To be able to cause such a commotion while fighting with Yin Baikong, the cultivation of the kidnappers must not be ordinary. Just as she was hesitating whether or not she should go and take a look, she realized that the direction had become peaceful again. She couldn't help but mutter to herself in surprise, "The winner has been decided so quickly?" With a creak, the closed door was opened. Yu Qianqiu ran out with his upper body naked. He shouted at the direction of the tremors, "Who is it? Who is it? Did you have nothing better to do? Causing such a huge commotion, can't you let me sleep?" He stared at Nongzhu for a while, then rolled his eyes. With a "pa" sound, he closed the door and retreated back into the room. Nongzhu was stunned and speechless. He was very sure that this brat had been staying in the room the whole time. If that was the case, it was indeed his judgment that was wrong. The kidnapping of Yin Baikong's grandson was really not done by this brat. Yu Qianqiu happily returned to the room. He hugged Furong, who was also smiling, and started to fondle her. He took advantage of her, causing her to pant and pant. As a result, Yu Qianqiu's beastly nature erupted. He directly pushed Furong onto the bed, and the two of them started to make love again. Nongzhu's divine sense went in to take a glance, then immediately retracted it as if she was escaping. She spat on the ground and cursed, "This brat is really a breeding pig. He has already done it several times since yesterday. Isn't he afraid that his life will be shortened?" How could he know that Yu Qianqiu knew that although he was a playboy, he would not be a pervert? He would definitely not watch others do such things. The reason why he hid in the room and fought with the hibiscus demon was to prevent Nongzhu's divine sense from invading the room and monitoring him, so that he could seize the opportunity to escape. In fact, when Hibiscus got out of bed to dress up, he had already left. The person lying on the bed was just a person he had found from Utopia who had a similar figure and was wearing the same mask to pretend to be asleep. His goal was to prove that he had always been present. Taking advantage of this gap, he successfully completed his task. As soon as he returned, he immediately ran out and shouted to prove that he was still alive. Looking at Nongzhu's dumbfounded look, it was obvious that he had been fooled by her. He was happy in his heart, and there was a beautiful woman beside him. Naturally, he wanted to have a good time. After a long time, Yu Qianqiu, who was in a good mood, opened the door and walked out dressed like a playboy. Nongzhu glanced at him and snorted, "Inhumane thing." Yu Qianqiu did not bother to pay attention to her. He climbed onto the swing of the rattan chair and closed his eyes, looking like he was asking for a beating. Suddenly, there were a few sounds of people flying in the air. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and saw that there were 7 more people in the courtyard. He knew Wenrui, but he had never seen Hua Zongming and the other 5 people. He looked at the charming young woman and continued to close his eyes to sleep. Hua Zongming and the other 5 people also looked at Yu Qianqiu, and there was a trace of doubt in their eyes. They looked at him and then at Nongzhu, and found that the two of them were actually somewhat similar. Thinking of Nongzhu's playboy behavior in the past, it was very suspicious. "Is this your son?" Shuxin asked Nongzhu with a bitter expression. Nongzhu was stunned. She was quite shocked by this question. When she came to her senses, she pointed at Yu Qianqiu, whose eyes were wide open, and said, "Him? Is he my son? How is it possible? Is he worthy of being my son? Damn it!" Yu Qianqiu jumped high on the spot, and almost directly bounced off the swing. He pointed at Nongzhu and shouted, "Old thing, what are you talking about? Do you want to fight?" Then he scolded Shuxin, "Who are you, crazy woman? Nonsense. Why do you have the same character as this old thing?" Shuxin was stunned. Unexpectedly, she was not angry after being scolded. There was a touch of shyness on her face, and she stared at Nongzhu blankly. It seemed that the sentence, "Why do you have the same character as this old thing," was very much what she wanted. If Yu Qianqiu said that they were like husband and wife, Shuxin would be even happier. "You brat, do you want to die?" Nongzhu rolled up her sleeves and looked at him fiercely. "You can try. As long as you can't kill me, I will burn your purple bamboo forest in the South Sea to ashes tomorrow. Yu Qianzhou opened the big fan with a swish, and a large group of rich and noble peonies was very dazzling. Oh! You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Before Nongzhu finished his words, Xu Xin had already grabbed his sleeve and said softly, "Forget it. Why do you care about young people?" Being touched by her, Nongzhu immediately lost his temper and subconsciously withdrew his hand. Seeing this, Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up, and he thought to himself, "There is adultery. There is adultery." He waved the fan in his hand even more loudly. After hearing the conversation between the two, Hua Zongming and others looked at Yu Qianzhou in confusion. This brat dared to say that he would burn the purple bamboo forest in the South Sea. Obviously, he was also a cultivator. After a closer look, they found that they could not see through Yu Qianzhou's cultivation. They were suddenly shocked. When did such a master appear in the cultivation world? Why hadn't they seen him before? Hua Zongming asked Nongzhu in confusion, "Who is this young man? He looks unfamiliar. Why haven't I seen him before?" Nongzhu sneered and said, "Why are you surprised? Don't be fooled by this brat's illusion. This guy is so talented that no matter how high your cultivation is, you can't see through his cultivation. In fact, he is only at the Yuanying realm." Hua Zongming and others said, "Oh," and showed an expression of understanding. However, the doubt on their faces did not decrease. Just imagine, a cultivator at the Yuanying realm dared to talk to Nongzhu like this. He must have a powerful background. Humph! Yu Qianzhou snorted coldly and showed Nongzhu a look that said, "You dare to expose me? Just wait and see." Nongzhu was naturally not afraid of his threat. She turned to them and asked, "Why are you here? Is there anything I can do for you?" Hua Zongming and others almost looked at Xu Xin at the same time. She did not say that she wanted to come and see. Why would a group of masters at the Huashan realm come here? Wen Rui was also aware of this. He immediately cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I invited you to come and have a seat." Nongzhu followed their eyes and looked at Xu Xin. She suddenly understood in her heart, but she pretended to know nothing. The atmosphere became a little strange. Yu Qianzhou looked at Nongzhu and Xu Xin and snorted coldly, as if he knew everything. At this time, Furong walked out of the room quietly. She bowed slightly to them and pulled Yu Qianzhou, saying, "Yu Qianzhou, why didn't Wenqing come? Shall I go and find her?" Yu Qianzhou frowned and thought, "My fake identity has been exposed. She may not play with you anymore." Just as he opened his mouth to speak, he suddenly saw an old man opposite him shout at Furong, "What did you call him just now?" The three words, Yu Qianzhou, immediately made everyone's eyes focus on Yu Qianzhou. Furong's eyes immediately became a little flustered. Yu Qianzhou cursed inwardly. This last probably didn't turn around for a moment and accidentally called out. Nongzhu's expression also changed slightly. The person who shouted was Yan Ji from the Xiushui kingdom. Zi had told him that Yu Qianzhou had killed 2 foreign cultivators with the surname Yan in the 100 Flowers Valley. He knew that they were this old man's disciples. This was a big problem. "Speak!" Yan Ji shouted again. Nongzhu stood between them and smiled awkwardly, "Don't be impulsive. Let's talk it out." He was mainly responsible for this. If he hadn't come here, these soul formation cultivators wouldn't have come here. Otherwise, Yu Qianzhou's identity wouldn't have been exposed. Yu Qianzhou closed the fan in his hand and gently held Furong's hand, saying with a smile, "It's okay here. You go back to the room first." "I didn't mean it." Furong lowered her head and said, "I know. You go back first. Be a good girl." Yu Qianzhou smiled lightly. Seeing that he was fine, Furong felt much more at ease. She nodded and went back obediently. Zhangpeng, who came after hearing the noise, also retreated to protect Furong at his signal. Yu Qianzhou stared at Yan Ji and asked, "Who are you? What right do you have to yell at my people?" Yan Ji narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "I'm Yan Ji, a middle-stage soul formation cultivator from the Xiaoshui kingdom. That girl just called you Yu Qianzhou. Are you Yu Qianzhou from the Wuxia cultivation world?" Yu Qianzhou put away the fan in his hand and rubbed off the human skin mask on his face. He threw it into his storage pouch and said expressionlessly, "I am Yu Qianzhou. My name is Yu Qianzhou. Is there a problem?" Since his identity had been exposed, he didn't need to wear the human skin mask anymore. They all looked at Nongzhu. They all knew that when Nongzhu's disciple, Zi, was in the Wuxia cultivation world, she hung out with this Yu Qianzhou. No wonder Nongzhu was with a nascent soul stage cultivator. They were old acquaintances. Yan Ji sneered and said, "Yu Qianzhou, you must be familiar with Yan Cheng and Yan Fang, right? They are my disciples. What problem do you think there is? I was worried that I couldn't go to the Wuxia cultivation world to settle the score with you. I didn't expect you to come to me in person." "That's great." Yu Qianzhou immediately understood. So he was the master of those two dead people. This was a big problem. It seemed that he had to get ready to leave. He nodded slightly and said, "I understand what you mean. Your two disciples dueled with me, and in the end, they died at my hands. Today, you happen to meet me, so the master should go instead of the disciple, right? Brat, you have a sharp tongue. You want to kill me? You want me to let you go?" Yan Ji's body was suffused with a faint killing intent. He snorted and said, "Today, I will bully the weak. Don't think about leaving here alive. Yan Ji, don't be impulsive. Let's talk." Nongzhu cupped her hands and persuaded, "He is just a junior. You don't need to do anything. You will lose face if this gets out." "Nongzhu, what do you mean? Do you want to help this brat stop me?" Yan Ji narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice. Hua Zongming also slowly stepped forward and said, "Nongzhu, friendship is friendship, but this brat is from the Wuxia cultivation world. You promised not to interfere in the Wuxia cultivation world's affairs. Are you going to break your promise today? I think it's better to let Yan Ji solve this himself. You and I will not interfere." Chapter 481. So you and I don't need to interfere? Nongzhu asked with a sarcastic smile. The other party had inserted himself into the conversation, clearly warning him that if he interfered in the matter between Yu Qianzhou and Yan Ji, then he might have to intervene as well. It was understandable. The six of them had always been relying on each other in order to gain a foothold in the cultivation world. Hua Zongming was the owner of this place, so he had to be the first to speak. "Hua Zongming, are you threatening me?" Nongzhu still had a smile on her face, but her eyes were cold. Hua Zongming shook his head and said, "Think what you want. Nongzhu, I just want to remind you that you won't interfere with the cultivation world of Wuxia." "Of course I won't interfere with the cultivation world of Wuxia." Nongzhu pointed at Yu Qianzhou and said, "If you want to, you can check it out. This guy has left the Wuxia Cultivation Alliance and fought with the Daluo sect before he left. Now that he has left the cultivation world of Wuxia, he is no longer a member of the cultivation world of Wuxia. So, I won't interfere with the cultivation world of Wuxia." Pu Taidong coughed and took a step forward, saying, "Leaving the cultivation world of Wuxia doesn't mean he won't go back. Who knows if he's out for fun or something else. Pu Taidong, you've gone too far." Nongzhu waved her hand and pointed at the sky, saying, "Most of the soul-forming stage masters in the world came from the cultivation world of Wuxia. According to what you said, Yin Baikong is probably a member of the cultivation world of Wuxia." They frowned and looked at each other. Yan Ji said coldly, "Nongzhu, are you determined to go against us?" "I never want to go against anyone. I just want to live a free and unfettered life." You should know that, Nongzhu said lightly. Then she looked back at Yu Qianzhou, pulled out the bamboo flute from her waist and gently stroked it in her hand, saying, "But this guy exposed his identity in front of you because of me. I don't want to owe anyone anything. Otherwise, I won't feel at ease. Today, I will leave these words here. Before this kid leaves Deyang City, I will not let anyone touch him. Nongzhu, do you think you can protect him alone?" Mu Sang snorted coldly. Nongzhu suddenly turned around and stared at him. She said word by word, "I, Nongzhu, can travel around the world freely. Do you think that I only know how to play? My Southern Sea's purple bamboo forest has been able to stand tall in the cultivation world for so many years. Do you really think that it can be exchanged for being aloof from worldly affairs?" Mu Sang was stunned by his words. There was one thing he had to admit. Although few people had seen Nongzhu fight, he had never heard of him losing in the hands of anyone in the cultivation world for so many years. This alone was enough to prove that the world-famous master Nongzhu would definitely not be simple once he made a move. There was an iron law in the cultivation world, and that was, those who were famous did not live up to their name. In the cultivation world, the weak were prey to the strong. No one could last long by relying on a false reputation. For someone like Nongzhu, who had been free and unfettered in the cultivation world for so many years, he had never lost in the hands of anyone. How could he be so simple? Yu Qianzhou did not speak at the side. He looked at Nongzhu in a new light. He did not expect Nongzhu to protect him when he was facing 5 cultivators of the same level. This was completely different from Nongzhu, who was always at loggerheads with him. No wonder he was his master's old friend. He felt a little bit of respect for Nongzhu. When Rui looked at Yu Qianzhou in surprise. He had also heard of this guy here. It seemed that many people here had lost in his hands. It was said that the disciples of Bing Chengzi and Yin Baikong at the end of the crossing calamity stage had died in his hands, as well as the 2 disciples of Yan Ji in front of him. This guy really had a lot of enemies, and all of them were top figures. He actually dared to leave the cultivation world of Wuxia and come here. The Wen clan was the only country that did not send people to the cultivation world of Wuxia. Because when Lan Feng had been in seclusion for many years, the other members of the Wen clan did not dare to make decisions without his consent. Therefore, they did not participate in this matter. In this way, Wen Rui thought that the Wen clan and Yu Qianzhou did not have any grievances. Of course, he did not know that Yu Qianzhou was Bai Chongqun's disciple. Otherwise, the grievances of the previous generation would inevitably involve the next generation. The atmosphere at the scene was a little strange. Yan Ji and the others were hesitating whether to take action or not. It was not because they were afraid of Nongzhu, but because they were worried about the person behind Nongzhu. Xuxin was the most embarrassed. If she had not pulled them here, this would not have happened. "I have a compromise. I don't know if you are willing to listen." Xuxin braced herself and said. "I'm all ears." Hua Zongming smiled. In fact, he was most unwilling to make a move here. Dian Kingdom was his territory, and Dian City was the most prosperous and densely populated place in Dian Kingdom. Based on the cultivation of these people, if they were to make a move, the people in his territory would be the ones who would suffer. Xuxin looked at Yan Ji and said, "We are not in a hurry to solve this matter. Since Mr. Nongzhu said that he would not intervene after Yu Qianzhou leaves Deyang City, it is better to wait for Yu Qianzhou to leave Deyang City." "What if he never leaves Deyang City?" Yan Ji sneered. "Humph." Yu Qianzhou finally spoke. He raised his eyebrows and said, "If I want to leave, how many people in the world can stop me?" Nongzhu glanced at him and thought, "You haven't learned your master's skills, but you have learned your master's arrogance." "Oh. When are you going to leave?" Hua Zongming asked with a smile. It was quite funny that he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. "When it is time to leave, I will leave," Yu Qianzhou replied. Yan Ji immediately mocked, "What do you mean when it is time to leave? Once the news that you are in Dayang City spreads, Bing Chengzi and Yin Baikong will come to settle accounts with you. In such a dangerous situation, I am afraid you will always have an excuse not to leave." "Old man Yan Ji, you don't have to provoke me," Yu Qianzhou said proudly. "You soul formation experts can't stay in Dayang City every day. I have a word of advice for you. Don't send disciples at the tribulation passing stage here, lest I kill more people." Yan Ji's face darkened. These words were a bit harsh. The 2 disciples who died in the hands of Yu Qianzhou were at the tribulation passing stage. Pu Taidong snorted, "Young people really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You are only at the nascent soul stage, how dare you speak so arrogantly?" "It's not that I'm speaking arrogantly," Yu Qianzhou said indifferently, "it's just that I think no cultivator below the soul formation stage is my match. If I am number 2, no one dares to be number 1. I have already experienced this when I was in the Wuxia cultivation world. In my eyes, no cultivator below the soul formation stage is an expert." Everyone's faces changed, including Shu Xian and Wen Rui. These words were a provocation. It was clear that he did not care about cultivators below the soul formation stage. If it weren't for Nongzhu, they would have slapped him to death on the spot. Nongzhu rolled her eyes and was speechless. This guy was really arrogant. Once these words were spread, those who were not convinced would drown him with their spit. This was a challenge to the tribulation passing stage cultivators of every country. "Ha!" Hua Zongming clapped his hands and laughed. "Little brother, you are really heroic. I have decided not to intervene for now. I believe that your words will spread throughout the cultivation world in a few days. I want to see how you will be the number 1 cultivator below the soul formation stage. I won't do it myself, but I'll spread what you've just said. Then, I'll see how you'll die. Since Brother Hua, the host, has said so, I won't intervene for now," Pu Taidong said jokingly. He also looked like he wanted to watch a good show. "Yes. This is now a matter for the younger generation. It's not good for us to intervene." Miao Hanyuan said to Yan Ji with a smile, "Brother Yan, if you bully the young, it's a bit too much. Why don't you see how the younger generation will settle it first?" "That's right." Mu Seng also nodded. "Brother Yan, I think so too. Sister Shu Xian, what about you?" "Me?" Shu Xian looked at Nongzhu and said, "I have no opinion. I will follow the opinions of my brothers." Yan Ji naturally understood what everyone meant. He immediately laughed and said, "Yu Qianzhou, I wanted to give you a quick death. Since you are looking for trouble, I will fulfill your wish. I will also do you a favor for Mr. Nongzhu." After that, he flew away. There was nothing more to say at this point. Of course, he wouldn't stay any longer. Hua Zongming and the others all cupped their hands at Nongzhu and also flew away. Only Shu Xian said to Nongzhu helplessly before she left, "I really didn't mean it." As soon as they left, Nongzhu immediately poked Yu Qianzhou's forehead and scolded, "Is there something wrong with your head? They won't dare to touch you with me here. What are you trying to do? You are the one who has a problem with your head." Yu Qianzhou waved his hand away and said, "This is called goading. If I don't say this, even if old man Yan Ji doesn't make a move now, he'll still keep a close eye on me. I can't stand being watched by a master in the soul formation stage every day." "Goading?" Nongzhu scolded, "Goading is more like goading. You've goaded yourself into it, haven't you? When the time comes, all the cultivators in the crossing calamity stage will come one after another. Let's see how you will deal with them." "Who the hell will deal with them? They are not my family members. I will kill every one of them. I will kill every pair of them until they don't dare to come." Yu Qianzhou sneered. He thought to himself, I am not afraid of cultivators in the crossing calamity stage. I have more than 1,000 cultivators in the crossing calamity stage who are good at fighting. Who dares to compete with me in numbers? Fine. As long as you leave Daeong City, I don't care. I want to see how many people you can kill. Nongju looked disappointed. Damn it. How dare you say that? If it weren't for you, would my fake identity have been exposed? Since I can't play dirty, I will play hard. Who is afraid of who? Yu Qianzhou said grumpily, I will kill as many as they come. Wen Rui was speechless when he saw the two of them openly discussing killing in front of him. He was thinking of sending a message to the Wen family to restrain them from joining in the fun. He would consider it as giving Mr. Nongju face. Otherwise, he would really send 2 cultivators in the last stage of the crossing calamity stage to teach this arrogant boy a lesson. Wen Rui didn't want to listen to Yu Qianzhou's bragging anymore. He said goodbye and left the yard. Nongju also landed on the swing angrily and took a nap. Yu Qianzhou knew that he was doing this for his own good. He didn't want to quarrel with him anymore. When he walked to the door of the room, he stopped, as if he thought of something. He walked back to the swing, grabbed the rope and gently swung it. Nongju opened his eyes and looked at him. He said, one who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. What do you want to say? Yu Qianzhou didn't mind that his words were sarcastic. He said bluntly, I have a favor to ask of you. Nongju sat on the swing. Although it was comfortable to be swung, he didn't show any mercy. You are known as the most powerful person in the world below the soul formation stage. Do you still need to ask me for something? When you leave, help me bring Furong to Obedient Sky Island. If my master doesn't want her to stay, help me bring her to your purple bamboo forest. Just treat it as letting her accompany Ze. Yu Qianzhou slowly said. He didn't want to send Furong away. The key was that he was afraid that something might happen to her in the current situation. He wanted to send Furong directly to Utopia, but he hadn't thought of how to explain it to Chu Ping'er. No woman would be willing to share a man with another woman, right? He was feeling very conflicted. He liked all these women and wanted them all, but he didn't want to hurt them. After thinking about it, he couldn't think of a perfect solution. It was really a headache. He had to stop them from seeing each other for the time being. Furong? Nongju was stunned and pointed to the room. Is she the mortal girl who slept with you? What you said is so unpleasant. It simply tarnishes Mr. Nongju's elegant reputation in the world of cultivation. Yu Qianzhou pushed the rope and swung the swing. He said, she is not a mortal. She is also a cultivator in the middle stage of bearing essence. She is also a cultivator? Is it possible? Nongju began to doubt his judgment. He had been wrong these days. Yu Qianzhou didn't hide it from him. I made some restraining breath pills. After taking them, others can't easily see through my cultivation. Restraining breath pills? I've heard of it. It seems to have been lost. I didn't expect you to be able to make it. Nongju suddenly became interested. A sudden pressure was generated, and the swing immediately stopped moving. He reached out and said, give me a few pills. Let me go and scare your master. No problem. I'll give you a bottle for you to play with. But you have to agree to my conditions first. Yu Qianzhou said. Nongju jumped off the swing and looked at him while pinching his chin. This guy has 7 orifices exquisite pill and restraining breath pills. They are all lost treasures. It seems that he really got the true inheritance of the Dan Grandmaster. I wonder if he has any other treasures with him. I am a cultivator in the middle stage of deification. Do you want me to run errands with a bottle of restraining breath pills? Nongju pretended to be angry. You want to blackmail me? Yu Qianzhou sneered. Ze took a priceless treasure from me. I didn't even say a word. Now you want to blackmail me? Fine. I don't need your help. You either ask Ze to return the priceless treasure to me, or you give it to me in spirit stones. I'm not picky. Chapter 482. Ze took your priceless treasure? How come I've never heard her mention it? Nongzhu asked suspiciously. Don't try to fool me. What is it? It's very precious. There's only one of it in the whole world. Yu Qianchou said bitterly, I used countless demon cultivators and ghost cultivators in the demon ghost realm. I searched the entire demon ghost realm and collected some rare spiritual herbs to refine a Rui pill. Rui pill? Nongzhu was shocked. The Rui pill you mentioned, is it the one that can keep one's appearance forever? It's more than that. After taking it, it can cleanse one's muscles and marrow, and one will no longer be afraid of any poison in the world. Yu Qianchou covered his face and cried, it took me a lot of effort to refine one, but I didn't expect that Ze would take it. I want to cry but no tears will come out. I'm so sad. Then he suddenly raised his head and said, do you think this Rui pill is priceless? Do you think it can be bought with money? I don't need your help. You have to pay me back for the Rui pill. Is it true? Nongzhu asked weakly. Yu Qianchou immediately shouted, you can ask Ze whether it's true or not. She has taken it, and I don't know whether it's true or not. Don't play dumb. Pay me back. He stretched out his hand. Nongzhu was stunned for a while. She didn't expect her daughter to have such a great opportunity to take the Rui pill. It seemed that her trip to Wuxia was not in vain. When she came to herself, she slapped his hand away and said embarrassedly, since Ze has taken it, I'm afraid she has already refined it into nothing. How can I pay you back? Thinking of the day when Ze bullied Yu Qianchou on Shuntian Island, he had already associated the scene of Ze forcibly snatching the Rui pill from Yu Qianchou and then swallowing it. Yu Qianchou wanted to cry but no tears came out. After that, he was bullied by a woman, but he couldn't say it, I don't care. Neither of you father and daughter are good people. Yu Qianchou's expression was ferocious as he said, if you can't take out anything to compensate me, I'll just go all out and complain to my master. I'll say that you two father and daughter conspired to steal my Rui pill. Nongzhu coughed and waved her hand. It's just a magic pill. All right. Let bygones be bygones. I won't argue with you anymore. I'll bring your woman back to you on the way. There's no need to disturb your master for such a small matter. He's very busy with Nanming right now, so let's not disturb him. Yu Qianchou had a miserable look on his face. He still wanted to say something to maximize his benefits. Nongzhu suddenly clapped her hands and said, I almost forgot something very important to you. I have to tell you about it. What is it? Yu Qianchou was stunned. Boy, you're too young to play with me. Nongzhu saw that she had successfully changed the topic. She coughed and said, you know your situation in the cultivation world. Let me ask you, how much did your master tell you about the masters in the Huashan realm? No. Yu Qianchou shook his head. Didn't your master tell you anything when he taught you? Nongzhu asked curiously. Yu Qianchou thought for a while and replied, no, he told me to comprehend it on my own. Nongzhu was stunned and said, did you figure out everything you learned by yourself? Yu Qianchou scratched his head. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that since he joined the cultivation world, the three masters that he had been apprenticed to did not teach him much. Whatever was randomly thrown to him, he would treat it as a treasure, just like a dog seeing a bone. He worked hard to learn while bleeding and sweating. He walked step by step in constant failures and attempts. Among the three masters, Hao Sansi was the one who cared the most about him. Unfortunately, he was killed by the Daluo sect not long after he gave him an introductory book. Guan Weiwu of the Fuxian Island was a different story. He was taught by his master, and cultivation depended on himself. He did not even teach him anything. He wanted to learn the Guiyuan swordplay, but he could not count on him. Therefore, he tried to practice blindly. As a result, he made a mess of the Guiyuan swordplay. After he mastered it, he did not know if it was still the Guiyuan swordplay. As for Bai Chongqun, he was a big shot. He seemed to think that his apprentice should be as talented as him. He talked a lot of mysterious words, and in short, he asked Meng Qi to comprehend it. Fortunately, he gave him the animal play to practice, but he did not know how effective it was. Master's advice has benefited me a lot. Yu Qianzhou smiled faintly. He could not say that his master did not teach him anything, could he? The person in front of him was his master's best friend. If his master heard this, he did not know what his master would think. In fact, he did not want to tell anyone about the hardships he had experienced along the way. It was not something that could be explained in a few sentences. If he said too much, people might think that he was pretentious. Only he knew how much he had sacrificed. Some things should be buried in the heart. This was his greatest wealth. He comforted himself by saying that he should not show his wealth. He would rather let others see the arrogant, domineering, cruel, and vicious Yu Qianzhou in the cultivation world. The injured Yu Qianzhou would not let him show his face in the cultivation world. It was better to be a domineering powerhouse than a pitiful person who complained miserably. He thought so and did so. He felt very good about himself, and there was nothing bad about it. Nongzhu keenly caught the faint and indescribable bitterness on his face when he said this. She moved her mouth, but some words did not come out. They were all men. There were some things in common, as long as they understood it in their hearts. But there was one thing that Nongzhu had to admire by Chongqun. The mysterious skills of Yu Qianzhou were not simple. They had great potential. If Yu Qianzhou's skills were all achieved by self-understanding, then Bai Chongqun really had a good eye for people. It was impossible for a random disciple to have such a high power of understanding. He should be carefully selected. But he did not know that Yu Qianzhou had never thought that he had a good power of understanding. He had always thought that he was a very stupid person. Otherwise, he would not have been killed at a young age in his previous life. So he had been whipping himself to work harder and harder. Diligence could make up for it. Nongzhu stopped trying to fool him and asked solemnly, "Have you heard of the 3 souls and 7 spirits?" "Yes." Yu Qianzhou nodded seriously and said, "Is the 3 souls and 7 spirits related to the Huashan realm?" "Of course it's related. If it's not, why would I talk to you about it?" Nongzhu said calmly, "The 3 souls are the heaven soul, the earth soul, and the life soul. The 7 spirits are Tianchong, Linghui, Qi, Li, Jinjing, and Ing. Every normal person has the 3 souls and 7 spirits. Of course, ordinary people can't detect the 3 souls and 7 spirits in their bodies like cultivators." "You mean that cultivators can detect the 3 souls and 7 spirits in their bodies?" Yu Qianzhou subconsciously touched his chest and said in astonishment, "How come I have never felt the 3 souls and 7 spirits in my body?" There was something to learn, so his current image was that of a respectful and good student. Nongzhu glanced at him and thought, "It's not all luck that this guy can get to where he is today." She snorted and said, "You wish. Even I can only detect the 3 souls and 4 spirits. Do you want to see the 3 souls and 7 spirits with your current cultivation? You must be dreaming. Only those who have reached the last stage of Huashan realm can see the 3 souls and 7 spirits. You can only see the life soul of the 3 souls." "Ah. No." Yu Qianzhou was surprised and said, "I've never seen my life soul." "Bullshit. How did you reach the Yuanying realm without seeing your life soul?" Nongzhu scolded. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head and giggled. He bowed and said, I really don't understand. Please teach me. As he spoke, he walked to the swing, pulled off the hem of his long gown, wiped it on the swing, and said with a smile, Please sit down. You can lie down and talk slowly. I'll swing for you. Nongzhu looked at his exposed trousers and was stunned. Then she took the opportunity and said, Old man? Do I look very old? Yu Qianzhou repeatedly waved his hands and smiled apologetically, You're not old at all. You're handsome and elegant, there's no one in the world who can compare to you. You look even younger than me, That's true. Nongzhu touched his chin and lay down on the swing. He looked at Yu Qianzhou, who had lost the front hem of his robe, and said, Boy, do you always flatter people? I think you're very good at it. No. If you want me to flatter them, they have to be qualified like you. Yu Qianzhou smiled and gently shook the swing for him. He said, You said my cultivation can see the life soul. Is it the yuanying in my body? Nongzhu asked, Do you know why mortals get sick easily, but cultivators don't? I don't know. Please tell me. Yu Qianzhou smiled and said. The main reason why mortals get sick is that their souls are invaded by external evils. Their souls are unstable, and their bodies will show various symptoms of exhaustion. Some people, because of regular exercise, strengthen their bodies and strengthen the stability of their souls. Because their souls are stable, it's difficult for external evils to invade their souls. That's why they seem to have stronger resistance than ordinary people. Nongzhu said with a smile, Let me give you an example. There's a person who exercises regularly and a weak scholar. Both of them eat a poisonous food by mistake. You will discover a very interesting thing. Even if the person who exercises regularly eats more and is poisoned more deeply, it is usually the weak scholar who dies first. On the other hand, the person who exercises regularly can persevere longer. Perhaps he can even wait until someone comes to save him. That's the advantage of a stable soul. Damn it. That seems to be the case. But it should be because of good physical fitness and strong resistance. There's no scientific basis for your statement. Yu Qianzhou asked, Those who exercise regularly, are those who practice martial arts in the secular world? Chapter 483. Practicing martial arts in the secular world or cultivation among cultivators is a way to improve the stability of the soul. But the progress of the latter is incomparable to that of the former. Nongzhu tapped on the armrest of the rattan chair with her slender fingers and said leisurely, It's not unreasonable to cultivate step by step. The main purpose of the qi refining stage is to nourish the body with spirit stones until the body can bear the tempering. Tempering? How to do that? I haven't. Yu Qianzhou said anxiously, as if he was worried that he had missed something good. Tempering is the Zhuji realm. You haven't gone through the Zhuji realm? Nongzhu turned around and said indifferently, Don't tell me you directly jumped from the qi refining stage to the yuanying stage. Yu Qianzhou smiled embarrassedly, So it's the Zhuji realm. Yes. How could I directly jump to the yuanying stage? Nongzhu rolled her eyes at him and closed her eyes again. She said, The cultivation of the qi refining stage is to prepare for the Zhuji realm. Otherwise, you will die if you force it. If you don't believe me, you can bring a mortal here and let him take a foundation-laying pill. I'm sure the pill is more poisonous than poison, and he will die immediately. Yu Qianzhou didn't doubt this. He had personally experienced the pain of the Zhuji realm. Ordinary people couldn't bear it at all. A foundation-laying pill would definitely kill them. After stepping into the foundation establishment stage, you've truly stepped into the doorstep of cultivation. What is the Zhuji realm? The Zhuji realm is to lay a good foundation for cultivation, which is also very important. Otherwise, it is impossible to extract the 3 souls and 7 spirits from the body to form the core. Nongzhu opened one eye and waved a finger at Yu Qianzhou. She said, without the qi refining stage and the zhuji realm, an ordinary person will definitely die if he forcibly extracts the 3 souls and 7 spirits. Because once the soul leaves the blood, flesh and meridians of the ordinary person, the person is already dead. You mean, after cultivating to the zhuji realm, the core in the body is condensed by the 3 souls and 7 spirits? Yu Qianzhou asked curiously. He had never heard of such a thing before. So this was what core formation was all about. It seemed there were some things that were difficult for people at other levels to know. To be more precise, core formation is turning the formless into the tangible. It's condensing the 3 souls and 7 spirits in the body into tangible objects. Nongzhu smiled leisurely and said, bearing essence is like incubating an egg. When the egg hatches and matures, your nascent soul will break out of the shell. In other words, a life soul. Now do you know what a life soul is? So that's how it is. The life soul is indeed the nascent soul. Yu Qianzhou asked eagerly, what about the other 2 souls and 7 spirits? Where are they? That's not right. Didn't you say that core formation is formed by the condensation of the 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls? Why did it only hatch a life soul and nothing else? You can't become fat with just one bite. If I want to see the other 2 souls and 7 spirits, I naturally have to continue cultivating. Nongzhu raised her hand and pointed at Yu Qianzhou's abdomen and said, the life soul you see now is actually the 3 souls and 7 physical souls in one body. Have you noticed that your nascent soul is like an unconscious fetus, forever in a deep sleep? Yes. I've never seen it open its eyes. Yu Qianzhou nodded and said. It's right that you haven't seen it open its eyes. Once it opens its eyes, it means that it has woken up and your cultivation has reached the crossing calamity stage. Nongzhu explained, your current cultivation is still in the nascent soul stage, which is the stage when the nascent soul fetus matures. When it wakes up and you enter the crossing calamity stage, that is the growth period of the baby. And the final stage of the crossing calamity stage is the sign that the baby has grown into an adult. Yu Qianzhou said, that is to say, even at the final stage of the crossing calamity stage, I can only see the life soul, but not the other souls? Yes. Nongzhu nodded slightly and said, why is the life soul called the life soul? Because it is the first life soul to be born, and the other 2 souls and 7 physical souls will also be born from it. When you can see the life soul in your dantian giving birth to the heavenly soul, it means that the nascent soul in your body has grown up and can reproduce. At the same time, it means that you have entered the early stage of the Huashan realm. So, the heavenly soul is the sign that the cultivation has reached the Huashan realm? Yu Qianzhou smacked his lips and looked like he was drooling. Isn't it said that the divine realm is the divine realm? There are geniuses and gods. It can also be said that your cultivation has entered a new world and supported your own sky. That's why it is called the Huashan realm. Nongzhu looked at his greedy face and said with a smile, when you break through the Huashan realm and look back, you will find that there is a huge difference between the final stage of the crossing calamity stage and the early stage of the Huashan realm. Of course, of course. Otherwise, why is it called the Huashan realm? Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and said, but I am still far from the Huashan realm. I don't know if there is any hope. If you continue to make trouble in the cultivation world, it is not impossible for you to survive. Nongzhu joked, with the speed of your cultivation, you have saved a lot of time compared to others. If you can break through the final stage of the crossing calamity stage before you are 100 years old, you will have hundreds of years to slowly struggle. I believe that even a pig can climb to the Huashan realm in a few hundred years. Of course, the premise is that you will not be killed in these hundreds of years. But according to your situation, it will be difficult for you to live until you are 100 years old. Nongzhu did not forget to add. Yu Qianzhou wanted to scold her on the spot, but when he thought that he still had questions to ask her, he could only shut up and curse in his heart. Damn it! Do you think I am like you? Without Ze, I have no worries and can go wherever I want. I have so many people I love, how can I just leave them alone? It is easy for me to plan for myself. It is not a problem for me to cultivate in seclusion every day. But how can I watch my loved ones die of old age? I want to enjoy immortal happiness together with everyone when I become immortal. Forget it, there is no way to talk to you, a person who eats and waits for death. Isn't there a middle and late stage in the Huashan realm? Will the rest of the souls come out one by one in these 3 stages? Yu Qianzhou asked. Something like that. Nongzhu nodded slightly and said, if there is heaven, there will be earth. Once the heaven soul comes out, the earth soul will be separated from the life soul, and then the first soul will be Tianchong. When the heaven soul, the earth soul, and the first soul are gathered, it will be the peak of the early stage of the Huashan realm. When the second soul is gathered, the third soul is the spirit, and the fourth soul is the peak of the middle stage of the Huashan realm. When the fifth soul is gathered, the sixth soul is the essence, and the seventh soul is the peak of the late stage of the Huashan realm. The life soul will guard the body and not be confused with the others. The Huashan realm. It's really unfathomable, 2F** king unfathomable. Yu Qianzhou rubbed his hands and said, now that you can see the 3 souls and 4 souls, you have reached the peak of the middle stage of the Huashan realm. That's nothing. Nongzhu said disapprovingly, you are far worse than your master. Your master has 3 souls and 7 souls. I'm afraid he has reached the stage of fusing souls. Fusing souls? Yu Qianzhou licked his lips and said, what's that? A stage higher than the Huashan realm, ascending to the immortal world. Nongzhu pointed to the sky, shook her head and sighed. When the cultivation of 3 souls and 7 souls is completed, starting from the 7 souls, they will be fused back to the life soul according to the order in which they were separated. Once the 7 souls are fused back to the life soul, he can ascend to the immortal world. Then, every time a soul is fused back, his strength in the immortal world will be improved by 1 level, which is about the same as the Huashan realm. As for what exactly happened, no one is very clear about it. It's all just a legend. Damn! Becoming an immortal. Yu Qianzhou covered his chest excitedly, as if becoming an immortal was right in front of him. Nongzhu turned to look at him and sneered, why are you so excited? You don't even know when you will break through to the tribulation stage, and you are still dreaming about becoming an immortal. Isn't your dream too far away? This basin of cold water immediately poured on him, and he was immediately brought back to reality. Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly and said, I'm just dreaming about it. If I have a dream, I have a goal to strive for. I'll just work hard. It's good enough that you can reach your master's level. Nongzhu sighed, becoming an immortal? I don't know how those ancient cultivators did it. Yu Qianzhou sighed dejectedly, that's true. I don't know when my master can fuse the 7 souls. He swung on the swing weakly. I've also asked your master about this, but your master is very secretive and won't say a word about it. Nongzhu spread out her hands and said, I guess he felt that there was no hope for the fusion, or he wouldn't have gone to the East Holy Land to seek excitement. Yu Qianzhou nodded in agreement, and then swung on the swing again and said to himself, if the 3 souls and 7 spirits are fused again, I wonder what kind of realm his cultivation will reach. Nongzhu suddenly gave him a thumbs up and said without turning her head, congratulations. It is said that when you reach that level of cultivation, besides the solid life soul, the other 2 souls and 7 spirits can transform into 3 heads and 6 arms outside the body to fight against the enemy together. That is the cultivation of an immortal emperor in the immortal world. You can pull him down and sit on his seat. If you are comfortable, don't forget to come down to the mortal world to help me. I will be very grateful. Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly and said, "Don't insult me." 3 heads and 6 arms? Is that Neza? Neza is the cultivation of an immortal emperor? He suddenly thought of the third prince Neza in the myth of his previous life and was stunned. Who is Neza? Can he have 3 heads and 6 arms? Nongzhu sneered and said, "Don't tell me you know an immortal emperor." Of course not. I'm just imagining. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and smiled. You're really imaginative. Then what else are you thinking about? Nongzhu asked casually. But Yu Qianzhou also answered casually, I'm thinking, what is the cultivation of an immortal emperor? Yes, there is a saying about it. It's said that it's a god. Nongzhu waved her hand and pointed to the sun in the west and said, it's said that after the 3 souls and 7 spirits are fused again, they can be divided again. But at that time, the 3 souls and 7 spirits will be released to cultivate, instead of staying inside the body. Each soul can become a sun. There is an old legend. It seems that a god's cultivation has reached the realm where he can release all 3 souls and 7 spirits. As a result, 10 suns appeared in the sky and there was no night in the world, only day. The common people in the mortal world couldn't stand it. At this time, a god called Yi suddenly appeared. He pulled his magic bow and shot down 9 suns. So there was only 1 sun left in the sky. Yu Qianzhou stood rooted to the spot. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.